Hello, and welcome to the MegaCast by Actual Tech Media. Our topic today, IT Decision Series, Critical Factors in On-Prem and Cloud Data Storage and Data Management. Now, I've been thinking a lot about these MegaCasts, and the one thing that I've noticed is regardless of the topic, I always wrap up each session with at least one cool aha moment. There's always something that sort of lights up and tickles the inside of my brain, something new to learn about, to discuss, and to debate. That's one of the biggest reasons I love being here with you all every week. And I can tell you that this MegaCast is definitely going to light up those neural pathways, get your brains firing on all cylinders, because today we're digging into data management, both on-prem and in the cloud, in order to help you make the right platform and data moves for your organization. To lead us through this fascinating and, let's be honest, layered discussion today, we'll be hearing from experts and innovators at Synology, Rubrik, Commvault, Veeam, and Nisuni. If you have not joined us for a MegaCast in the past, a very special welcome to all the first-timers out there. Actual Tech Media created the MegaCast and EcoCast series to help educate technology professionals like yourself on the latest innovations and trends in enterprise technology. We all know how fast our industry moves, so these events are designed to get you the hottest insights and up-to-date information efficiently from the comfort of your home or office. MegaCast and EcoCast allow you to pose and answer questions, to connect with other experts in your field, and to help you solve your most pressing technology challenges. Now, before we get into our exciting sessions today, just a few housekeeping things for you. Of course, we do have a few of those awesome prizes lined up for you, and I'm going to come back to those in just a moment. But first, I want to draw your attention to the questions box in your webinar control panel. If you haven't already said hi, we love seeing all you awesome folks connecting from around the world. So drop a greeting, give a wave to your friends in the Actual Tech Media community. Let us know what's lighting up your brain today. We also want this to be an informative event for you, which means we want to see those technical questions. So throughout today's MegaCast, we hope you'll get engaged and make sure to ask all the questions you have about data storage and data management and all the cool solutions and strategies that we'll be discussing with our experts. Now, not only will we have team members responding to you during the live event, but we will also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of each presentation. If we do not get to your question during the live event, don't worry. The awesome humans from Synology, Rubrik, Commvault, Veeam, and Nisuni will be following up with you afterwards. Now, we all know that good things should be shared, so when you have that aha moment or you hear something that gets your brain tingling, be sure to share it with your friends. You can actually use that Twitter button right there in your audience console, and the hashtag for today's MegaCast will automatically be added to your post. And hey, while you're exploring that audience console, make sure to check out the Handout tab. You're going to find some fantastic resources and takeaways from our speakers here today. We've got an info pack collection of solution briefs, technical overviews, a report on cloud protection trends, and more. So be sure to click around in that Handout section and download some of those resources. Now, my name is Jess Steinbach. I'm with Actual Tech Media, and I'm so happy to be one of your moderators for this fascinating MegaCast today. My awesome fellow moderators, David Davis and Scott Becker, are here helping answer questions on live chat, and we're going to be chatting with David a little bit more in just a moment here. Okay, there is more than one way to get your brain buzzing today. How about an electrifying collection of prizes for you to win? In today's MegaCast, we have 5 Apple M1 iPad Air tablets that we will be giving away to 5 lucky winners. And that is not even including the $500 Amazon gift cards that we're going to be giving away every 30 minutes. Of course, you must be in attendance during the live event to qualify for those prizes. All winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. If you are not sure what those terms and conditions are, you can actually find them right there in that Handouts tab. So just click in and scroll down to the bottom. As I mentioned earlier, the questions section of your audience console is great for posting feedback. Also, if any technical issues do come up today, you can post them there. A quick reminder that a browser refresh will probably fix just about any issues, slides, audio, video, but if not, throw a comment in the questions section and our crew is there to help. But the absolutely most important thing to remember here is how much we love hearing all your insightful questions during these live events. In fact, we love it so much that we have a special additional prize for all you inquisitive folks out there. In today's MegaCast, we will be giving away a $50 Amazon gift card to the best question asked in each of our live sessions. Each of our live sessions. I'm just repeating that there. The team will review all of the questions asked after the event, which means that even if your question does not get read out in a live session, there is still a chance to win. And we're going to follow up with all the winners after the event. There's a few good reminders for you here on the screen. And again, the full T's and C's in your handout section. Do remember that any grand prize winners here today are required to submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media. And hey, if you are lucky enough to be a winner today, you always have the option to donate the value of your prize to one of our selected charities. Thanks to generous prize winners on previous Actual Tech Media events, thousands of dollars have been donated to these wonderful charities. So if you are a winner today and you would like to get involved with one of these amazing organizations, let us know because we would love to help make that happen. Again, we're so happy that you're here in the live event today, and we want to keep that good feeling going. So please do use that Twitter button that we chatted about earlier. Add the hashtag for today's event and start sharing all the exciting things that you're learning about. And make sure to connect with Actual Tech Media on Twitter and Facebook. We definitely want to hear from you. And if you're looking for some additional awesome content after the event, check us out on YouTube. You can actually click on that YouTube icon right in the center of the slide right now if you do want to get that open. But don't go and watch any videos right now because we want you here. We've got a great day lined up for us. And while you're opening tabs for later, why don't you open one here for LinkedIn? Visit Actual Tech Media on LinkedIn for some great additional content. And speaking of exciting content, if you haven't already checked out the Actual Tech Media Guerrilla Guide Book Club, now is the time. The Guerrilla Guide Book Club gives you access to free enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts, so you can stay up to date on trending enterprise technology. And yes, these books will work on your Kindle or mobile device, and they are all completely free. You can download these awesome resources at GuerrillaGuide.com. There's a link in that Handouts tab for you as well. Now, if it wasn't clear by now, we think you're all pretty cool, and we're guessing that you've got a collection of pretty cool friends. So another way to win a prize is to refer an industry friend or coworker to the Actual Tech Media event series. You'll find a link to do that right there in your Handouts tab, and you will be automatically redirected at the end of the event as well. And I want to assure you that we will not spam your friends and coworkers. We will send them an invite to a list of upcoming events. If they don't respond, they're only going to get one more reminder from us, and then we will leave them nicely alone. But hopefully they'll start coming to some awesome events with you. And both you and your coworker could win a $300 Amazon gift card. We hold those drawings every month. So be sure to refer a friend because it could quite literally be a win-win situation for you both. Okay. Man, we have covered a lot of really important information already. And I don't know about you, but I am ready to get to those awesome aha moments that we talked about earlier. So let's start with somebody who is definitely guaranteed to light up our brains, my fellow moderator and fascinating expert, David Davis. Over to you, David.
Thanks so much, Jess, for the excellent introduction. I'm excited to chat with everyone here for just a few moments, and the idea is to get you thinking about the critical factors in on-premises and cloud data storage, data management, and data protection. And by the end of my keynote here, I hope you'll have a lot to think about, a lot to chew on, a lot to go back and research. And you might be saying, hey, wait, David, I thought you were going to give us some answers here. That's the whole point of this. Give us some answers. Well, yes and no. I'm going to provide you the questions, and I know that you're probably going to have most of the answers to these questions already. If not, this is a good prompt to go and find them. And then where you see challenges, where you say, I wish we could do better, I have no doubt that the experts on today's MegaCast will be able to provide the solutions to your challenges. So what I've got here are 5 slides, 5 points, starting off with number 1, knowing what you have when it comes to your data on premises, in the cloud, securing that data and protecting that data. So what do you have? What kind of data do you have? Ask yourself that. Do you know the answer? Hopefully you do. But I know for a lot of us, over time, that data set has grown. The applications have changed. Maybe you just started at the company a few weeks ago, and perhaps there's no tool to push a button and tell you what kind of data you have. It's important to know what kind of data you have because just like a human being, data has its own set of needs and all forms of data are different. And then you need to know, where is your data stored? Maybe it's stored on-prem in specific storage arrays. Which storage arrays exactly? Which LUNs? Where are those storage arrays? Maybe it's in the public cloud. Maybe it's in a SaaS application. of some kind. And we're seeing that, of course, more and more. It could be out at the edge at remote locations, remote data centers. We used to call those remote offices. That data today is everywhere. It's on end user devices, mobile devices, desktops, laptops, home devices, and it could be with your partners in their data centers. It's important to know the data you have and where that data is stored. And oh yeah, how much of it is active? How much of it is critical? What's tied to your critical applications and what's just archival data that you don't really need that much except for compliance reasons. So in my mind, that's the first step, simply knowing what data you have, where it is, what applications it's tied to, how much of it is active, how much of it is critical, and then you can move on to protecting that data because you can't protect it if you don't really know what it is or where it is. So ask yourself then, what would happen if you lost that data or if it was unavailable? We talked about defining what data is critical. Well, what would happen if that data was gone? Maybe you have a small scale outage. Maybe it's just down for 15 minutes or half an hour or an hour. What would happen in that case? How much money would your company lose on a small scale outage versus a large scale outage? Large scale outage, of course, is going to range based on the size of business and the criticality of your applications. Large-scale outage might be a day or 2 days or a week, and you might lose access to just a certain set of data. So it's not always an all or nothing scenario. What would happen if the data in the cloud or in your SaaS applications were lost? And by the way, you can't always trust your cloud providers to protect your data. If you read the details of the agreements you signed with them, most of the time it says you are responsible for protecting your data. And they are not responsible if there is data loss. And of course, there's nothing they can do to absolutely guarantee you won't have a small or large scale outage. Those things do happen in the cloud and SaaS applications, believe it or not. And then what's your recovery point objective and recovery time objective for each of your different data sets? Of course, recovery point objective is how much data loss you're willing to tolerate, meaning you're okay recovering back to last night's backup versus a backup from, let's say, 1 hour ago. Recovery time objective is how quickly you need to get that data and the associated applications back up and running. Are you able to define those for each of your different data sets? And once you have those definitions, can you really meet those requirements? Can you really meet the RPO and the RTO that you would like to achieve? And have you tested it? If so, how often have you tested it? When was your last full-scale test? And even worse than having an outage, what if that data were held for ransom or posted publicly out on the internet? What would that do? What would the ramifications be of that for your company? These are all important questions to answer. And then finally, what are you doing to protect this data specifically? Of course, the easy answer is, well, we back it up. Well, that's great, but how quickly can you get it back? What if you had to do a massive restore of every piece of data you had? How long would that take? Have you tested that? And what sort of security is on the data repository where you're currently storing that data? What are you doing to protect that repository so that it doesn't become infected with ransomware? These are all, of course, important questions to ask. And then we have number 3, serving up what you have. Are you meeting the needs of the end users in terms of the performance and the availability for your applications and your data sets? Where is that data being served up from? Is it aligned with the applications and the end users? And should you consider migrating your data to perhaps newer storage or more high performance or higher capacity storage? Should you consider migrating it to the cloud, perhaps? Maybe that makes sense for you, maybe it doesn't. And is your current data protection solution effective for protecting and recovering your critical data? Now is a great time to ask yourself that question with so many data protection companies on today's MegaCast event. And then, of course, you got to pay at some point. What is the total cost of storing your company's data? Do you know? Have you calculated that? And what if you add in the maintenance costs? What if you add in your management time? In other words, what's the total cost for storing your company's data and protecting your company's data? And then does that cost scale with the needs of your business? And what can you do to lower the cost? If you're unhappy with the total cost here, what can you do to lower that cost? Great questions to ask, great questions to think about, great questions to pose to today's expert presenters. How can they help you to perhaps lower the total cost of storing and protecting your data? And then finally, number 5 here, the last point I wanted to make is you need to be planning for what you will have in the future. Will your current storage and data protection solution meet the needs of your company in the next 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, and beyond? Will your current storage and data protection solution meet the needs of your changing applications and the architectures of those applications? More and more companies are moving to cloud-native applications, running inside containers orchestrated by Kubernetes, and those cloud-native applications have very specific, unique storage requirements and data protection requirements. Can your data protection solution meet those needs? And what will the cost of storage and data protection be for your company in, let's say, 2 years or 5 years? And is that cost going to be acceptable to you? Well, those are all some great questions, in my opinion, that you should be asking yourself. And if you're unhappy with the answers, you should be asking today's expert presenters what they can do to help you. We've got experts from Synology, Rubrik, Commvault, Veeam, and Nasuni, some of the most innovative, leading data storage, data management, and data protection companies in the world today. So I hope that that gave you some food for thought. And with that, I'll turn it back over to our moderator. Back to you, Jess.
Oh man, thanks for that awesome keynote, David. I think that was a great foundation to set for everyone today. Before we jump into the solutions, do you actually understand what you have and where you are now? As David said, you can't protect what you don't know. So that was great. And we did get a lot of questions, people saying that they were trying to take notes as they went along. Just a reminder that we will send the recording out after the fact, so you will have a chance to see all of David's awesome points and things you should be considering after the event as well. Speaking of where you're all going, we have a poll question up for you. We want to know, what is your time frame for adding new or updating existing IT solutions to your company? So what this question really means is, what is your time frame for taking action on some of the on-prem or cloud solutions that you're going to be learning about today? So we want to take a moment to fill that out. Awesome. All right. That was your first test of the day to see how awake everybody is. Looks like everyone's awake. That's great. So it looks like we had a lot of not sure's, and that's an awesome place to start. Well, speaking of getting started, it is my pleasure to introduce you to our first presenter in today's MegaCast, Chris Cooper, Enterprise Account Manager and Technical Solutions Specialist at Synology. Chris, thank you so much for being here to get us started today. I will hand the mic over to you.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris, and I'm a Technical Solutions Specialist at Synology. Today, we'll be discussing how Synology's hybrid cloud solutions can be leveraged for multi-site deployments and remote work collaboration. Now, Synology has a wide range of network storage solutions, but our main focus is providing security, redundancy, and availability for your data. Over the past 20 years, we've developed and refined our own unified ecosystem of hardware, software, and cloud services, all of which can provide scalable and flexible options to meet the needs of our customers, from small business to enterprise deployments. Businesses often take advantage of on-prem storage for things like fast access speeds, secured local access, and private data ownership. But with the increasing demand for remote collaboration, data availability, and flexible scaling, the addition of cloud storage and services has become a necessity in most business environments. Today, we'll look at a couple of the ways in which Synology integrates the advantages of both on-prem and cloud-based storage solutions. We'll begin with the customer story involving BBC Media Action, which is BBC's international charity. Their video production teams produce content that reach more than 100 million people each year, and these projects are developed between 16 offices located around the world. With so much video content being developed in different locations, BBC Media Action ran into some challenges. Initially, remote offices were using portable drives to store their project files. However, attempting to track and organize data on so many separate devices was a challenge even in a single office. Furthermore, without proper redundancy, data loss was a serious issue, and in one case, months of work was lost due to a fire at one of the offices. And while each office manages to shoot and edit their footage locally, the main office in London had no easy way to preview project files at branch locations. To start addressing these needs, video file servers were deployed at each branch location. These would provide a larger local shared storage for video projects and increase the accessibility of office data in a central location on the network. Once the branch offices were taken care of, the next step was to deploy a host NAS server at their HQ location. This would function as the central hub for their video production data, but also function as a central management server for all devices deployed at their branch locations. In this scenario, Synology was able to provide multiple solutions for the needs of BBC Media Action's video production operations. We provided local shared storage for improved efficiency in data availability and collaboration at remote offices. The branch locations could also back up their data to an offsite location to improve resiliency against data loss. And the NAS at HQ was configured as a central management server, allowing centralized control and management of the remote servers. Also, files backed up to the remote server provided the desired visibility for HQ. But what if the teams needed multi-directional sync for their data? One example would be if HQ wanted to distribute files to all the branch servers, or if certain branch servers wanted to download files from other branch servers to their location. They could accomplish this by syncing all the data between each server. A traditional two-way sync generally involves the need for all devices to hold the same amount of data synced at every location. While this can be useful for specific data needed locally at every location, it can quickly increase storage and bandwidth needs for every office while dealing with tasks, especially when dealing with larger video production files. This is where Synology Hybrid Share can provide a flexible and efficient way to sync only the necessary data in multi-site deployments. With Hybrid Share, storage servers at every location can upload specified data to a centralized data lake in our C2 storage cloud service. While a copy of all this data is stored in the cloud, it's also visible and available on demand for each location. So if a specific office needs some project files from another office, then it could pull those files down from the shared data lake in C2. And this can be repeated at every location to synchronize data as needed. With Synology Hybrid Share, you get the best of both clouds. A local cache at each location provides quick access to current projects while also providing visibility and access to additional data stored in the cloud. This means you can save money on the storage hardware at each location without sacrificing the access to your data. It also allows for flexible scaling in storage capacity without the need for additional hardware, since the local cache at each location can be configured and dynamically maintained. Next, we'll hop into a quick demo showing the setup and configuration of C2 storage and Hybrid Share. So here we have the dashboard for our C2 storage environment, and in this you can see a breakdown of how your storage is being utilized. As you can see here, we have around 320 gigabytes being used for Hyper Backup and 600 gigabytes allocated for Hybrid Share in a subscription plan for 1 terabyte of total cloud storage. If we head over to the Hybrid Share tab on the left, you can see how much cloud storage we have allocated for the Hybrid Share service. Here, we can also open the drop-down menu for the Hybrid Share folder labeled Hybrid to see there are already a handful of Synology NAS paired back to it. Above these folder details, you'll find some additional options to configure your hybrid share folder. You can click into Edit to change the folder quota, which we currently have set at 600 gigabytes. This is something that can be changed in the future. Since we have 424 gigabytes available, we could expand that as needed. But there's also the option to take a manual snapshot or set up a snapshot policy. For manual snapshots, you have the option of creating a description or locking the snapshot if you'd like to prevent it from being automatically removed if it would otherwise be rotated out due to a retention policy. To set the snapshot policy, you can configure the snapshot schedule as well as the retention policy for the number of versions. Here, you'll also find the ability to restore from previous versions as well. Now, let's jump into DSM so we can mount that hybrid folder that we showed in the C2 storage dashboard. First, you're going to want to start out by opening the control panel, go into shared folder, and then we'll mount a hybrid shared folder. Click Start here. And it's generally going to ask you for authentication for the C2 storage account, but we've already got that logged in here, so we'll just hit Allow. As you can see, we have the 600 gigabytes for the shared folder and the 1 terabyte total capacity. We'll hit Next. If this shared folder wasn't already created, you could create it here, but we already have hybrid created, and it's linked to those 3 other devices. So we'll click OK. Next, it's going to ask you to enter an encryption key. And here, you can also import a key file if you have that as well. On the next screen, you can choose where you want to have this located. But it looks good to go, so we're just going to hit Next. It also has 500 gigs reserved for the local cache. And then we'll hit Done. The hybrid share folder will now initialize, and now it's connected. And then you can see we now have local access to this on our Synology NAS device. Now that we have that hybrid share folder mounted to the local device, it can be accessed via local file protocols or through FileStation. So we're going to open that up here, head into the hybrid folder, and as you can see, there's a status icon next to these files showing that they're currently stored in C2 storage. If we take a look at the utilization of our hybrid folder, we're only using 230 gigabytes of that 600 gigabyte local cache that we set up earlier. So if you were to be at the limit of that 600 gigabytes, generally, you'd be opening up a file and it would automatically pull that file down from C2 and cycle out older data. With this, we'll look at the option to pin to the local cache, which permanently sets it in the local storage. You also have the option to unpin and then release the local space as well. By doing so, it removes it from the local device and sends it back up to the cloud, freeing up that space. One of the best aspects of Synology Hybrid Share is that it can be configured in the backend without changing the user's workflow. So what we're going to do here is navigate to the Hybrid Share folder via a map network drive, and then you can drag and drop files or folders from the local device to the map drive, just as you would normally within Windows Explorer. With this, it doesn't change the way that users interact with the files and folders, reducing the learning curve needed to implement the solution. So if we try to add additional data, what's going to happen is Hybrid Share will begin to swap out old data to make room for new data being added to the folder. And once the entire transfer is complete in the Hybrid Share folder for the NAS on the left, that new data will become visible and accessible to the secondary NAS from the shared storage in C2. One of the largest benefits of this exchange is that requests to access and download new data won't affect the bandwidth on other devices and environments connected to the Hybrid Share folder. Instead, that new data can be pulled directly from the data center and take full advantage of the bandwidth available to that data center. This would be especially useful if users at multiple locations were attempting to access and download the same new project files at the same time. Now, we just demonstrated how you can use Synology Hybrid Share to create your own hybrid cloud environment. However, it's also important to consider how your users will be accessing and interacting with the data stored there. Cross-platform access is becoming an increasingly important aspect of many businesses' workflows, as users commonly have the need to access work files from various devices. Synology Drive provides a platform in which you can access and sync work data from a mobile device, desktop client, or internet browser with ease. Here, we'll provide a demonstration of how to access and share files via Synology Drive. We'll get started here by opening up the Synology Drive admin console. This will look blank if you haven't configured it before, so this is basically what it's going to look like if you're setting it up for the first time. And we'll get started here by clicking on the Team Folder tab on the left-hand side. This will bring us into the page where you can enable team folders and shared workspaces. However, you'll see that My Drive is already enabled. This is because the user home service has already been enabled on the NAS. So Home and Homes folders, which are the user's personal workspaces, are already available. However, you're also going to want to create a shared workspace. So to do this, you need to enable another team folder. Here, we're going to select Household Documents and enable this as a team folder. Once enabled, it'll show the versioning window, and within this window, you have a lot of options for how you want to version and maintain versions for this team folder and the files within it. The maximum versions are currently set to 8 by default. This should be fine for a lot of office work use cases, so we'll leave it at that and hit OK. And now that this has been enabled as a team folder, it can be accessed through the Synology Drive portal. Now let's take a moment to jump into the settings and check out a few things you can change in here. Here, you can calculate the usage of the package for things like file versions, database, and Synology Office files. You can also clear up space by clearing the recycle bins all at once here. You can also change settings for things like content indexing, performance, and file ownership transfers. Now under User Sync Profiles, you can set the file types that each user is allowed to sync. And under Sharing, you can set specific sharing permissions, internal sharing rules to keep things internal or allow external sharing, as well as customizing your own sharing link. While we do currently have this set at Quick Connect, you can also set a custom domain or DDNS customized domain as well. So once the backend is set up in the Synology Drive admin console, we're going to take a look at the Synology Drive web portal. As you can tell, we've got this folder populated with a few different types of Microsoft Office documents. But do keep in mind, we have Synology Office enabled for our Synology Drive web portal. So that means we can actually take this document right here and convert it to a Synology Office file. Now this is similar to what you would do on another cloud platform, except this time it's self-hosted. And once the document has been converted, then it will have all the capabilities of a Synology Office document in that you can have collaborative editing, as well as whenever you edit the document, as you'll see at the top, it'll save changes as you go. This is why it's important to maintain versioning. If you head over to File, you can see the drop down where you can see a version history down at the bottom there. But right now, we're going to check out the share settings. In here, you can find a file link to where the file is located within Synology Drive. You can also set the privacy settings for anyone internal to allow them to either view, comment, or edit the file. And you can also get a little bit more granular with the invitee list, where you can set specific permissions for each user that you choose to invite to be able to view, edit, or manage the document. You also have the option to create a public link where you can share with files with people externally, whether you have a client or otherwise. With this, you can set specific settings to either require a password or have the link expire after a period of time. Now finally, I want to bring this back to the cross-platform accessibility of Synology Drive. What you're seeing here is the starting window for the desktop client. However, it's going to be a similar setup if you're running through Android or iOS. So within this, you can plug in the IP or Quick Connect ID of the Synology NAS, and then you'll type in the user credentials in order to connect to the NAS. There's also SSL for encrypted transmission as well to secure that data while in transit. Here it will verify the credentials and test the connection to the device before bringing you to this window where you can choose to sync a task or create a backup task. Here we'll choose a sync task, and on the next step you'll be able to choose which folder you would like to sync on both the NAS as well as the device. With this, you have the option of syncing to a team folder and then also enabling on-demand sync, which would allow visibility and access to files on the NAS in a shared workspace, but also saving space on the computer without syncing all the files down. Now, if you were to sync a local folder with the team folder on the NAS, it would then make those files visible on your local machine, as you can see here. It would also show a status icon, similar to that of Hybrid Share, showing that it's available and located currently on the NAS. This actually utilizes the on-demand sync feature directly within Windows and integrates with that. So if you were to check the properties, it would actually show as 0 bytes on the disk, and this is because it's still located on the NAS. However, if you were to open the file, it would download it from the NAS and bring it locally to the machine. So in review, Synology Drive not only provides cross-platform accessibility, but also collaboration and sharing options for your users and their data. And that should wrap it up. I want to thank you for taking the time to join us today, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to the Synology team anytime.
Wow, thank you, Chris. That was just an awesome presentation. A great way to start out the MegaCast today. I can see that we have a lot of questions coming in for you, Chris. So before we jump into that, I just want to point out that there's a poll question up on the screen. We would love to get your feedback on any additional resources that you want to explore from Synology. Your feedback is so valuable, so please do take a moment to answer that poll. But in the meantime, Chris, thank you for being here.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me.
We have tons of questions to get to. I'm also getting a lot of, this is awesome, thanks for the demo. So lots of high fives coming into the chat for you. And we're going to just dive into these. Rob actually was wondering, it sounds like Synology is optimized for video production. Can you explain how large file transfers would be optimized across the WAN links?
Yeah, so I'm assuming this is in relation to hybrid share, which is based on an on-demand sync system. So it'll download the files that are currently being accessed and or worked on, and it'll rotate these files out if they're no longer kind of used in the cache as it fills up. And then we also have hybrid share will also upload block level file changes, so it'll be only the differential data for those larger files, so you're not syncing the entire file each time.
Perfect. Okay. We got a few questions here. People are always very interested in customization. And you kind of touched on a few things in terms of access and setting users. Can you talk about the overall dashboard and just how customizable this is company to company?
Yeah, so I mean, we do have a few dashboards. In terms of generally what will happen is the dashboard for things like your C2 dashboard or your kind of drive admin console, that sort of thing, those will kind of be populated with the tasks and data relating to your different, whether it be backup tasks or the data that's being utilized or the devices that are connected. So it kind of is something that populates based on how you're using it. There is some flexibility in how you're viewing things, and I would say if you're looking for kind of a single pane dashboard for monitoring, our Active Insight tool is something to look into.
Okay. Also, I'm combining a few questions here, but lots of people kind of wondering how it works with everybody accessing one thing from multiple remote locations and potentially saving over each other and things. Can you address that a little bit?
Definitely. So there's a few things with, I guess it depends on how it's, being accessed. If you had a mapped share folder in a hybrid share environment, that's something where file locking can be set up. There are some options for that. And otherwise, we do have snapshots and versioning. So, if a separate file is created, you can kind of revert if something is overwritten or data is deleted by somebody else. And then we also do have kind of, as mentioned in the Drive demo, Synology Office, which does allow that multi-user collaboration within those different types of kind of document files and spreadsheets and things that are available in there.
Okay, and on that note, Joshua was wondering if somebody does pin to a local cache, is that still going to be reflecting any remote changes?
Yes, it'll still sync. It's just a matter of it'll still sync back up to the cloud. It's just going to make sure that that pinned data isn't cycled out when the cache fills up and you're downloading new data. It'll just kind of be static there and maintained if it's something that you want permanent local access to.
Perfect. Okay. Honestly, I wish we could keep going because we have so many great questions, but I think you and your team are going to stick around just a little bit longer, Chris, and answer some questions over live chat and certainly follow up with people afterwards. Is that right?
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Okay, and I do have one last question for you, Chris, before you head off here. If someone wants to get started with Synology, what should they do? What's their first step?
I mean, definitely head to our site. There's a lot of great materials on there and some live demos where you can jump into an active environment. Otherwise, I'd say reach out to our sales team. There are a lot of technically kind of focused individuals who are happy to help out and assist with answering any questions you may have as you're getting started out.
Awesome. I love that. Okay, well, Chris, thank you so much for that awesome presentation. I know everyone really appreciated that. And I do want to remind everyone in the audience, because we did have a few questions, people saying, where can I get these slides? Chris has actually loaded a slide deck for you in the Handouts tab, so you can go and check that out if you'd like to get a little more info right away. Okay, well, oh man, this is getting better and better, guys. We are already at our first prize giveaway. So we have a $500 Amazon gift card plus one of the grand prizes for you now. So an awesome Apple M1 iPad Air tablet, and you do get to choose your color, folks. So get excited about that. Our next winner, our very first winner of the $500 Amazon gift card today is Zhang Wan of Hawaii. Zhang Wan of Hawaii, you have won a $500 Amazon gift card. And our next grand prize winner of an Apple M1 iPad Air tablet color of your choice is Scott Fagan of Illinois. Scott Fagan of Illinois. Congratulations to Zhang and to Scott. As always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after the event. And don't forget that there are still lots more chances to win a prize today, plus that best question card after each session. But for now, let's keep zipping right along and jump into our next presentation on the MegaCast. Up next, we are so excited to introduce Leo Vella, Inside Sales Engineer at Rubrik. Leo, thank you so much for being here on today's MegaCast. The mic is yours.
Yeah. Thank you for the introduction. Hi, everyone. Really glad to be here, Inside Sales Engineer for the mid-market space over here at Rubrik. And I'm very excited today to talk to you about how we manage backups and cloud efficiency when it comes to protecting not only on-premises workloads ranging from different hypervisors like VMware, Hyper-V, Acropolis Hypervisor, physical file sets extending into the cloud for AWS, Azure, GCP, and of course, M365 protection. So as we're rolling along, I just want to start out with on-premises workloads. Now, we're dealing with very, very scary statistics nowadays. Ransomware is the topic of a conversation for C-levels when previously, just a few years ago, it wasn't. We're dealing with statistics around 700% increase year over year from 2020 to 2021 in ransomware attacks. And on average, when a customer does experience a ransomware attack, it takes about 21 days to recover from operational efficiency. And that time takes away not only IT operations' own time, but most importantly, organizational revenue. So the question is not exactly how do you prevent this from happening, but when it does happen, how will you recover? Now, over the previous years, organizations have invested in multiple different types of security measures, which are still very necessary today. But the perimeter security, network security, endpoint application, it's all very important for lowering attack vectors, increasing operational efficiency in terms of investigational efforts. But what happens when inevitably your data gets breached? In the past, we've seen that competitors in legacy environments haven't focused too much on that data security layer. Even though you are taking backups in your environment, how do you know that those backups will be clean and free from encryption once it's time to restore? And when that does happen, how do you know that you're going to be able to identify the point in time which backups are going to be the clean ones to restore from? And it involves a very long investigative process before you can get to that point. Well, here at Rubrik, we ensure that your data will be safe no matter what from a ransomware attack, all by following the Zero Trust architecture. Now, there's three key components to which we believe is very important to this process. First is an air gap. Now, there's different types, but we provide a logical air gap, one that doesn't require a separate appliance or investment in hardware to achieve off-the-network backups. Most backup providers, legacy-wise, they communicate over legacy protocols such as NFS, SMB. With Rubrik, we're API-first architecture, and the only authenticated users that are allowed to reach those backups are the ones through our UI, and that's also protected via role-based access controls and multi-factor authentication, which allows for that zero trust, no trust, always asking for authentication at every step. And for immutability, which is very important, so those files cannot be edited. We have a proprietary file system that allows for that immutability on top of our Rubrik appliance. So with all these three key components, it allows us to set us apart from the competition, those legacy providers. Typically, in those legacy architectures, aside from just having operational sprawl with virtual backup proxies, backup servers, catalogs, a disk-based backup target that you have to write to. Essentially, this is all on the network via SMB and NFS, and it's vulnerable to compromise. And even if a disk-based backup target is immutable just on its own, it's not logically air-gapped. And how do you know that their users are not accessible to this environment and ransomware hackers, other malicious groups may have access to this without critical multi-factor authentication or role-based access controls? So from this diagram, even with immutable storage, most of their backup environment has been compromised. With Rubrik, not only that we allow for immutability, but operational efficiency as well. Everything is written on our software-defined node-based appliance, and 4 nodes in a 2U hardware chassis. So everything that's necessary for a backup to be restored, from the file system, the software, the hardware, it's all off the network, since it's running API-first authentication only for reads and writes. And because of that, even though your SAN environment may have been compromised, your production servers, you can have the confidence that the backups in the Rubrik appliance are still there to be used. And from there, we also modernize the data protection. Instead of relying on those different virtual pieces in a hyperconverged architecture, consolidating everything into one piece allows for operational efficiency. No need to manage multiple parts of the environment. But we also have security intelligence, the ability to identify ransomware attacks through anomaly detection, sensitive data discovery. Where is your sensitive data living? Your PII, HIPAA compliance, GDPR compliant files. We're able to identify not only where those files live, but who has access to them. Are they properly secured? Those integrate with other security tools. Being an API-first architecture will allow for customers and organizations to build their own scripts, work with automation applications such as ServiceNow, Ansible, and that works with other SIEM and SOAR tools, most notably Palo Alto Cortex X SOAR. And lastly, once you are able to identify where the last clean backup is post a ransomware attack, we allow you to use live mount technology for faster recovery time objectives, utilizing the data on the Rubrik appliance itself as opposed to spinning up and shutting down that virtual machine on your SAN production. This all leads to a conglomerate of zero trust data management, end-to-end encryption, not only in transit, but at rest, using secure AD user groups and logins for role-based access controls. So only users that are authenticated are able to access data that they need. So SQL database admins only have access to the SQL backups. Test dev, they only have access to the test and dev servers that they need. And systems network admins to the secure data that they need. No need for any groups to cross over, and only people access what they need. And lastly, retention lock. So one thing that ransomware groups are pretty known for doing is, instead of being able to delete immutable backups, they've found a way around this, lowering retention policies on those backup servers down to 1 day. So before you know it, you don't have any backups to restore from. Well, with retention lock, which is working with Rubrik support, toggling that allows and disallows people from changing and lowering those retention rates for those mission-critical virtual machines. Now, it's not any security policy left behind. And we believe with this mindset, we're able to enable customers not only ransomware detection, but quick operational efficiency and fast restores. Now, outside of the on-premises architecture, there's also the challenges that come with protecting cloud workloads, AWS, GCP, Azure, all those virtual machine instances. So essentially, we build the operational simplicity for the hybrid and multi-cloud for on-premises and all of those public cloud providers that I've mentioned. It's important that this all be within one portal instead of having to switch back and forth for each of these, managing native protection in each of these individual clouds. We provide you the tools to consolidate all those efforts. So essentially, what does this look like without a backup tool in the cloud? Essentially, the biggest challenge with using manual processes to data protection is that it doesn't scale. Let's say you want to protect a single virtual machine instance. First, you have to create a backup plan, and for this, you'll find the volume to protect, take snapshots, apply descriptions, and execute your snapshot. And then you would have to incorporate cleanups, avoid storing snapshots beyond the desired retention period. And lastly, you'll have to prepare for recovery, which is, on average, about 30 steps. Now, this seems simple enough to do if you have one instance in one region in one subscription. Now, imagine doing this for many instances, many different services within the cloud. This multi-step process, it doesn't scale. It can result in missed backups, failed restores, and is prone to error. Imagine if you had to recover 10, 20, 30 instances spread across many different subscriptions and regions and not making any mistakes. Now, as you scale and grow your usage of the cloud, it is resource intensive and the amount of admin overload will be expensive. And if you consider scripting, this really varies by the expertise the author brings to the table. And next slide. Now, you could also use cloud-native protection approaches using native tools. And one of the basic design principles recommends to segregate workloads by account and region, as illustrated here. And when we look at backups using the native tools, it's designed in a very similar fashion. First, you'll need to organize and segregate each account in each region in AWS. Then you configure backup policies to protect your resources for that region by account. And this may seem simple enough when you do it for one or two accounts, but when you have multiple different AWS accounts, multiple different regions, imagine the resources and time it would take to configure backup policies across all your regions and all your accounts. There's no simple pane of glass available to you to manage your policies at scale. And you still need to build for multiple different objects. You have to account for file-based recovery. If someone in the organization had accidentally deleted or clicked a single file 3 months back, how do you find that one single file and recover it? Sometimes you won't even know the file name, but you might know the extension. Given no metadata is preserved, how do you recover? Application consistency. If you have a large enterprise between databases like Oracle, SQL, and the EC2 platform, there's no native support for application consistency. You could miss losing data. You'll need to account for that. Protecting against regional failures. If you have a regional failure or breach in one of the AWS regions, AWS Backup allows you to recover to a new site, individual account or region. And how do you do it at scale and in the region of your choice? You have to create a solution for that. And for customers with geo-dispersed AWS architectures, AWS Backup won't get the job done for you. It's complex to manage, recovery is manual, and you're missing many critical capabilities to operate efficiently. So how does Rubrik work? Well, first of all, cloud native protection is delivered via the service on our Polaris platform. Zero infrastructure is required. It only takes 2 steps to set up. No agents within the virtual machine to get things working, and no need for a backup proxy virtual machine running to perform backup and recovery. And using automated workflows and cloud best practices, it takes a few clicks to authorize Rubrik with your cloud and configure access to your accounts and subscriptions. Once it's set up, we automatically discover your environment. Now, we use this powerful SLA policy engine that I mentioned before to protect cloud instances. It's easy to create those policies, and you can reuse them for different workloads in the cloud. In addition to that, if you have dozens of AWS accounts, you can certainly apply the policy across all regions, accounts, and subscriptions. Now, this tremendously reduces your operational overhead and the time it would take to manage policies across your cloud instances. And that's cloud native protection. And lastly, just want to cover why we're having the conversation of protecting M365 data. Now, there's the misconception that because this data is in the cloud and it's provided as a service via Microsoft, that we don't need to protect it. Well, the reality is, with more people working from home more now than ever, this is now a business critical application and unprotected against data loss. We've seen up to 80% of people that own these applications have seen an email breach of some type, and 71% have seen a successful account take over. Now, there's a lot of different applications that we can take into consideration to protect. So for Microsoft 365, you probably also have the same tools to protect on premises as you would in the SaaS application. However, we still need very robust tools when it comes to identification and authentication. And essentially, we add everything else that's necessary for it. By working with Microsoft 365 native tools and providing our own tools, we essentially work together in providing your perfect secure environment, using Microsoft native tools for compliance and us for availability, using the e-discovery that Microsoft provides, but using the Rubrik tools that allow for granular recovery of email items all the way down to files within SharePoint, recovering to different Exchange Online mailboxes, and allowing for that air-gap security that's native with us because we're hosting those backups in our own Azure tenant. And because of authentication, we just ask for your credentials one time. Those aren't stored anywhere. And because of that, no one has access to those backups except for those that are authenticated through the Polaris application. And because of our partnership with Microsoft, we've engineered clever ways of ensuring performance and efficiency when it comes to both backups and restores. And if there's anything I want you all to walk away with, just know that Rubrik protection for M365, we allow for those rapid recoveries from ransomware with air-gap backups, simple restores, and recover from accidental deletion and data loss, not just ransomware attackers, but we unify the management of everything I've mentioned, from on-premises workloads, cloud workloads, and M365 into one UI. So don't take my word for it. Microsoft themselves have invested in Rubrik. And we have over 3,000 customers that trust us for data security across all these multiple workloads. And if you need to get more info, please visit Rubrik.com. Get in touch with your account team. We'd be more than happy to have a conversation with you, show a demo. We have many talented engineers. They'll be able to architect the perfect environment to be able to protect your data.
Okay. Well, Leo, thank you for an awesome presentation. Before we jump into the Q&A, I am going to put up that poll question again. We want to know what you want, additional information that you would like to get about the Rubrik solution. And Leo, thank you so much for that presentation and for sticking around to answer some of the many wonderful questions that we've got coming in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. Okay, well, I'm going to start with this one. We have Jeremy wondering, what are the audit tools available for clients who are prone to bank audits and compliance?
Great question. So you probably heard me talk about the sensitive data discovery. Essentially, there's a feature that Rubrik has that analyzes the metadata of the backups that we ingest. It's agentless. We're just analyzing what markers are on those backups. We have analyzers for common compliance requirements. So it sounds like you have more financial requirements, so FINRA, PCI, and extends to others like GDPR and HIPAA. You essentially use those analyzers, and this acts as a constant scan within the backups on the Rubrik file system, and we're able to identify and audit where those files are. So we can verify for you that the critical data in your environment is encrypted properly, not stored in any public file shares, and only the people that need access to them have access to them, and no one else.
Yeah, that's important. And I think, Joshua here is wondering, and on the note of kind of government as well and auditing, he's looking at the ability to segregate data for review. So he does work in government. It sounds like they get a lot of phishing things, and it's hard to know what's legit and what's phishing. So how easy is the insight and the visibility in real time?
So when it comes to being able to identify malicious emails that are coming in, that's not exactly in our space. We're more of restore efficiency for the M365 piece. When it comes to identifying those phishing emails, that'd probably be best left to an email filtering solution. We're more around the realms of if someone did click a bad link, ransomware got it into your environment, and let's say mass deletions happen in your Exchange Online environment, we enable organizations to be able to recover quickly, not so much with identification and investigation of that, on that side at least.
That makes sense. Absolutely. So if somebody is using Rubrik for backup, can they detect the ransomware alerts live if they're only using it for backup? Or would you only recognize a possible ransomware event once you've actually run the backup job?
That's a great question. So, backups are regularly taken. Essentially, we're always analyzing the environment from start to finish, even when a backup isn't currently being taken. As long as we have backups and are able to analyze the metadata and identify what a normal change rate for modifications, encryptions, deletions in your environment is, we can detect that live. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we'll need those backups taken, right? But once that's happened, we can identify, hey, there's an alert, there's been a mass encryption, you should probably check this out. And not only will you be sent an email alert, but you can check that out on the dashboard at any time.
Love that. Okay. And you did sort of address this in your presentation, but I just want to reiterate because we had a lot of questions about time delays and, balancing the protection of air gap with rapid restoration and performance delays with additional protection. Can you just reiterate some of that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So balancing restores, rapid restores, and the air gap is important. And there's a reason that we chose to go the route of a logical air gap as opposed to a physical air gap. Essentially, we are off the network since we're only communicating via Rubrik APIs. But that doesn't mean that the Rubrik appliance isn't able to authenticate with the hypervisors, your compute. We work with APIs with VMware, and essentially, it's as simple as live mounting the data on the Rubrik appliance. There's no need for a legacy restore process where we have to shut down the virtual machine, migrate the data over, turn on the virtual machine on the SAN. Essentially, it's just point and click with the Rubrik UI. And even though we're off the network on the backup side, that data is available to create a read-write copy anytime on the Rubrik appliance. And because we're constantly communicating with those hypervisors, it allows for those quick restores. And the alternative to that would be a physical air gap where we send that data elsewhere to a different appliance or to tape. That would be off the network. That would require additional steps for migration, bringing back to production or the Rubrik appliance. Since it's all done just through one hardware appliance, there's no need to do that.
Very cool. All right. Well, I wish we could keep going, Leo. Honestly, we have so many great questions. I'm hoping you and your team will be able to stick around a little bit and answer some of these over live chat. And thank you so much for your presentation today. Before you run off, you did mention this right at the end of your presentation, but I just want to reiterate next steps for somebody who wants to get started.
Yes. Thanks for having me. And really, to get started, all you need to do is go to Rubrik.com and go to the Contact Us page. Ask for your account team, and from there we can get a conversation started, get a demo if you're interested, and have the conversation help you architect the perfect data protection platform.
Love that. Thank you again, Leo, and for everyone who asked some amazing questions today. This was just a wonderful discussion. If you do want to get more information right away, click into the Handouts tab and download the technical white paper from Rubrik, Recovering Fast from Ransomware Attacks, the Magic of Immutable Backup Architecture. Really interesting read. So download that now and save for later when you're looking for that next brain boost. And we're going to jump right along here. Speaking of excitement, we have another prize drawing. So we're going to do a $500 Amazon gift card plus one of the grand prizes, an awesome Apple M1 iPad Air tablet. So our next winner of a $500 Amazon gift card today is Samantha Fox of Virginia. Samantha Fox of Virginia. And our next grand prize winner of an Apple M1 iPad Air tablet is David Jones of Pennsylvania. That's David Jones of Pennsylvania. So congratulations to Samantha and David. As always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after the event. And don't forget, still lots more chances to win a prize today. Plus, we have that best question coming up. So a little reminder that you are eligible to win a $50 Amazon gift card at the end of each session, and we'll be reviewing those after the fact and reaching out. So even if your question does not get asked, there's still a chance to win. Okay, zipping along in the MegaCast today. Up next, we are so excited to introduce Matt Tyrer, Senior Solutions Marketing Manager at Commvault. Now, this is a bit of an unusual case because Matt was actually scheduled to be on a plane at this very moment, but he didn't want to miss the MegaCast, so he did have to send us a recording. So I'm going to let him explain, and I'll check in with you after this awesome presentation from Matt. Enjoy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the May MegaCast. Today we're covering off cloud data management, cloud data protection. If you missed the last MegaCast, I believe it was in February, or at least the last one I was presenting at was February. It was all about ransomware. I think these things are fantastic. They're a great way to kind of see a broad spectrum of different approaches and strategies and solutions available in the marketplace. Just really great to educate yourselves on what's out there, what's current, and the different approaches people are doing out there. Now, unfortunately, I am actually physically on a plane while this is being presented. So this is recorded. I try and do all these live to be able to interact and to catch the questions as they're coming in. That said, when it comes to the questions, please definitely submit them, send them in. I will be responding to them out of band after the event. So I'll be emailing you directly with the responses. So definitely feel free to send in questions. I love responding to these things, especially around such important topics like cloud, hybrid cloud data management and protection. So please reach out, submit your questions. We will get to them after the session. So let's get started. A little bit about myself. My name is Matt Tyrer. I am the head of competitive intelligence at Commvault. I've been with the company about 14 years, started off as an SE, architecting, implementing, testing, and working with the product for quite a while before shifting and taking some of that technical knowledge onto the marketing side and eventually moving into taking on a leadership role with the competitive intelligence team. Today, we're going to be talking about what Commvault can do and some of our approaches when it comes to intelligently managing data, not just in the cloud, but kind of in that more realistic hybrid configuration we're seeing a lot of. So looking at getting data to, from, in, and across all these cloud providers here. So the way I wanted to approach it was looking first at, native protection in the cloud, and we're talking about that true integration, Next, moving into that mobility, that fluidity of data as you're moving it either to, from, across. It could be like a one-time migration, lift and shift. It could be something that you're iterating like DevOps and DR testing. It could be any number of things or a combination therein. Anyway, this is really where we expand into that multi-cloud idea and hybrid cloud idea. And lastly, looking at, going beyond just some of that core tenets of data management into really getting smart with the data that you're managing in the cloud and ensuring that it's properly secured. I didn't have any jokes to open things out this time. I ended up realizing I was going to use the same one as last time, and I didn't want to bore everyone. But this is the theme that we're looking at today in terms of just the overall reduction in friction when it comes to your paths, as varied as they may be, into a hybrid multi-cloud environment. There's different avenues with which you can achieve those goals and outcomes. There's different workloads with which you may need to protect and manage, and different operations you're looking to do in terms of levels of security, different modalities in terms of how that data is going to move to and from, and what those SLA plans for RPO, RTO need to be. And as I hope to demonstrate throughout the rest of the conversation, Commvault really does stand out in terms of the simplification of all these different routes into that hybrid multi-cloud configuration. And we're going to start off with just going through some of the core elements of differentiation that's really set Commvault apart when you look at the other solutions that are in market. And there's quite a few, especially when you're looking just at cloud. And let's look at what really sets us apart. It says here future-proof intelligent data management, but really what that means, it's like, what does that mean? What I look at it is the ability to support change. Your environments aren't static. Your workloads aren't static. Your policies aren't static. Nothing is set in stone. There's change coming, and if you're not prepared for that change or able to handle that change, then you're getting exposed to risk, complexity, and added cost. And there's three fundamentals that Commvault comes at in terms of how we address and support that ability to change and promote change within your environment. First, it comes with the industry's broadest workload coverage. Nobody else can cover off the broad spectrum of workloads that we cover. We cover everything from traditional on-premises workloads like on-prem databases, Sybase, DB2, IBM iSeries, heck, even mainframes, to the common workloads of today being a mix of virtual machine, DBaaS, PaaS, to workloads that are emerging, such as containers, IaaS, DBaaS stuff in the cloud, various SaaS workloads. So everything in between is all covered, regardless of where those workloads are deployed, where those applications live and move. It could be on-prem, across multiple clouds, or a combination of all of those things. It doesn't matter. Commvault delivers that the complete coverage, so that as the applications and platforms and hypervisors and clouds that you're working with change over time, you get that consistent experience in terms of the knowledge that Commvault will be providing the same support for those workloads, the new workloads, as you were familiar with and comfortable with from the previous or prior workloads you were working with. So, this coverage promotes your ability to change in the sense that it doesn't matter what you're currently using or what you're moving to, we've got it covered and we can protect and help you manage it. Now, on top of that comes, unparalleled flexibility in terms of not just how you can consume Commvault, through various, pricing models and licensing frameworks and stuff like that, but the flexibility of how you actually build the solution, deploy it, and scale, grow, and evolve it from there. How you build the solution day one isn't how it has to grow day 30, 5 years later, et cetera, et cetera. We've got customers that have been using the same Commvault instance for over 15, 20 years and been able to evolve that instance and their environment that it's protecting without having to rip and replace the infrastructure. Well, not the Commvault installation. Sure, the parts and pieces swapped over time. I mean, it started off as like a physical Unix box backing up other physical Unix boxes to tape, and now it's, hybrid configuration of virtual cloud and SaaS workloads, being protected by a mix of virtual cloud and, different workhorses, appliances, and driving that data into other cloud sources and object store and everything in between. So, just because you've gone and deployed Commvault one way for one site doesn't mean that you have to apply that same model to everything else. Maybe a hyperscale appliance works best for one location. Maybe a different reference architecture scale out works for another. Maybe SaaS works for some other workloads. So you've got that flexibility of really being able to best fit build what that environment looks like today and how it looks tomorrow. We're not locking you into any kind of framework. It's like thou shalt only do appliances. Well, no, it doesn't always necessarily fit. And with us, we give you that broad coverage and then the flexibility to build how you want to protect all of those workloads, to the most appropriate configurations for your business. And lastly, on top of that sits the unified customer experience. No matter how you deploy the Commvault solution, no matter what workloads or where they reside, you have that consistent, I'll use the term for the buzzword bingo, the single pane of glass. I mean, we've had a single pane of glass since day one, and we've preserved that. So it doesn't matter if you're backing up SaaS with other SaaS, with a SaaS backup. Doesn't matter if you're doing on-prem, cloud, multi-cloud, cloud native snapshots, array-based snapshots, databases, any of that. It's all delivered through that singular source of truth, that single place to manage everything, that unified customer experience. You can drive policy through it there. You can drive analytics through there. You can drive all of your security and ransomware configurations through there. So that gives you that single source of truth, so that as you grow, as you change, you have that consistent view across your entire data landscape. So with those tenants in place, those 3 building blocks, then we can start layering in the different intelligent data services. And of course, our core being data protection, but then looking at data security, compliance, digital transformation, data transformation, and of course analytics and insights. So these are kind of the what am I doing with that data now that now that I see it, now that I'm managing it. And all of these together, especially when you're looking at something as dynamic as modern cloud environments and multi-cloud environments, which are subject to a lot of change. Having this flexibility and this coverage really puts you in a powerful position to be able to drive your IT, your business through to success and drive value out of that. So with that core, let's look into what do we do specifically for in the cloud. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can approach native cloud backup. There's some limitations, of course, with some of the native controls, in terms of granularity, compression, deduplication, or the lack thereof, lack of security features, especially around ransomware anomaly detection. You don't have the same controls around security or even necessarily the role-based access to that data, or basic retention. What if I need to keep some data this long and some data that long? So when you're stuck with just the native tools or the approaches derived from those native tools, you might not be achieving your goals from an IT perspective, from a business or data protection perspective. What Commvault does is we have direct tie-ins and APIs into the native tools and engines available from the hyperscalers, but then we enhance them. We add more. What we look at is we provide that global namespace and awareness across either a single cloud or multi-cloud. So it doesn't matter if you're working in one hyperscaler, multiple hyperscalers, so a mix of public and private, you get that singular view across one instead of having different views for each of the different clouds. You've got that control in terms of security, role-based access, and the granularity to really allocate who can do what, who can see what within the environment. The efficiency of not just driving the native integration into the APIs from these different cloud services, but then taking that data, ingesting it, compressing it, deduplicating it, storing it more efficiently than it would have been done otherwise. And of course, the recovery in terms of not just in place, but out of place, being able to recover that, where you need it, which leads into that portability. We're going to talk a lot more about the portability in the next section, so I'm not going to focus too long on it here. But the key here as well is a cloud native approach to protecting data in the cloud. trying to protect data in the cloud the way that you did on-prem doesn't necessarily make sense. I mean, we've seen other vendors come at it with, hey, I'm just drop a virtual appliance in the cloud. It's like, well, you know what? That doesn't really seem very cloud-like. And with Commvault, we have a dynamic ability to scale up and down to meet the demands of your business. There's no need for these 24/7 virtual clusters or appliances running in the cloud. You can grow and shrink the Commvault instance, according to your needs. Do you need some more horsepower because you're doing like a big DR test, or you're iterating some of your development into the cloud? Great, we'll build it out, scale it out to accommodate that need. And then once that's done, instead of having to now just have that permanent compute and storage kicking around, we can then spin it all back down. So, to reduce the costs associated with some of these cloud workloads. And again, this is all driven through that unified experience, and leveraging the native API tie-ins to the various cloud services. No scripting. We did all the work for you. You don't have to worry. It's literally next done. Now I'm protecting Azure virtual machines. Next done. Now I'm protecting Aurora DB databases in AWS. Next done. Now I'm standing up or I'm protecting GCP VMs or whatever it happens to be. It's those native hooks, those native tie-ins, without that baggage of having to run things, and manage infrastructure the way that you did necessarily on premises as well. And this, I didn't, given I've only got like 20 some odd minutes here and I'm already halfway through, I didn't go through all of the different cloud providers. I picked the top two that we see most often from our customers here, being of course Azure, and the next one being AWS. And this is just us looking at some of the coverage and the integration points. This is building out that breadth of workload coverage that I was talking about earlier on, looking at how we link into the different security aspects, the storage tiers available, the compute aspects, paths, the databases, all of these different aspects of either operating natively within the Microsoft Azure cloud, or driving data protection and recovery operations for the cloud native workloads that are living in there. And of course, again, all with that consistent control plane to give you the same SLAs and outcomes in the cloud that you would expect within your own data center, with all the same security, all that recovery readiness, all the ransomware capabilities, all of that built in and available for you. The same goes with AWS. We look at the security tie-ins, the support for compute paths, OpenDB, very, very similar to what we saw in Azure, supporting some very unique things that not a lot of vendors out there do, like Dynamo, Redshift, Document DB. I'd say most people now support RDS, but not everyone is supporting some of these, really hot applications that we're seeing out of AWS. And I didn't mention on the Azure side, like Cosmos DB is probably one of the biggest growing databases being used within the Azure platform. And I'm pretty sure Commvault's one of the few, if not the only one, that actually provides native integrated backup for that. So just again, that coverage, that native API tie-ins to give you the peace of mind of working natively in the cloud. And the same goes for Google. Like I said, I just didn't want to spend too much time going through each and every cloud that we work with, but the same sort of infrastructure tie-ins. But I wanted to make sure that we have enough time to look at the dynamics of the data fluidity, moving data to, from, across, between, and around all the different clouds and hybrid configurations in here. I'll build this out here. And this is just a great example of what I was talking about before, in terms of not just the data fluidity, but that dynamic elasticity that Commvault is capable of delivering. This is just an example of how the native integration, the built-in migration and conversion capabilities, and that dynamic auto scaling all work together as part of, say for here, either a DR test, a migration, or an actual DR failover situation where we can see taking the existing backup copy pool from whatever tier of storage it happens to be operating in, orchestrating the actual replication, instantiation, creation of the Azure native VMs, and building out that dynamic horsepower to accommodate driving that data to achieve the SLA that you need. And then obviously once that burst is complete, being able to spin it all back down to eliminate any ongoing costs. And then once that data is now in the cloud, it can be further protected from the same Commvault platform with the same SLAs and RTOs that you'd be expecting prior to that migration. So you can just see in this one example here, some of that fluidity of being able to move data to from across between different clouds and platforms. Again, I didn't build out all of them, but this is just a perfect example here of kind of the all roads lead to Azure. I could swap in different cloud providers into the center there, but this is just an Azure example of all the different ways that we can migrate, lift, shift, recover data from other data locations and either bring them same for same, take VMware to VMware Cloud in Azure, or do a full conversion, like being able to take a native AWS virtual machine and make it into an Azure AMI and stand it up. Taking it from an AWS AMI and standing up as an Azure virtual machine. So being able to do the conversions for you instead of having to kind of rely on some of the manual processes there. This gives you an incredible amount of flexibility around not just kind of stuff like DevOps or dev test iterations. We see a lot of database testers use this, but also for DR, you don't have to have that warm compute just sitting there in case, hey, I need to do the DR failover here. I can automatically just fire up and scale out that compute power to drive the outcome that I need. Looking again on the pedigree in terms of what we've been doing in cloud. I mean, we first started working with cloud native data protection back in 2012, and you can see here we were working with Microsoft even before some of the Microsoft toolkits became publicly available. Working with Azure and M365 while they're still internal skunk works for Microsoft, and of course continuing through to protect and support their own internal workloads, and eventually building back in 2019 our Metallic BAS service with the control plane built in Azure. So we've got a SaaS backup solution built in Azure, leveraging our longtime Microsoft relationship. I mean, they've been a trusted partner since day one for Commvault, and that was 25 years ago. And we work very, very closely with them as a close strategic partner, over that period of time, and yeah. So I think we know what we're doing when it comes to cloud, and we've got the experience. And I think there's a great insurance commercial that's like, hey, we know how to do it all because we've seen it all before. And the cloud is definitely one of them. Having worked natively in the cloud for over a decade here, it gives a lot of experience. And for you as a customer, it gives you the peace of mind that what you'd be working with and deploying isn't beta. It's not like a version 0 or a 1.0. This is proven technology that has been proven in the field for a prolonged period of time, developed, iterated, honed into a really powerful engine for data protection of modern cloud workloads. Now, with that data protected and secured in the cloud, or moving between the cloud, different platforms, hypervisors, multi-cloud configurations, what else is there that we can start to do with it? So with that data under protection, with it under management, now it can start to drive a little bit more smartness into it here. Leveraging Commvault's built-in analytics engines, there are different things that we can do from a data governance perspective in terms of quickly identifying files that contain sensitive data like PII and make sure that they're properly secured. Tracking things like through our file storage optimization engine, which helps look for orphan data files. I mean, which is probably one of the hugest security holes that you all typically see is, these unsecured cloud buckets. It's like, oh, somebody spun up some dev and forgot about it. And oh no, now all the data is leaked. Well, using an analytics tool like the file storage optimization, or FSO as we call it, you can identify redundant data or identify data that's perhaps, inappropriately configured for access controls, or as I said before, orphaned, And then these aren't just reports, these are actionable data insights. So from these reports, you can actually execute action against the data sets and say, hey, that data shouldn't be there, move it. Hey, that data shouldn't have 777 permissions on it, change them. Hey, that data should be owned by X. And of course, having that insight, also enables our e-discovery and compliance tools to perform true e-discovery search, and putting things under legal hold, litigation copies, and being able to export that for further custodial activities. So, I've got the data, I'm managing it across the broadest spectrum of workloads and clouds. I'm managing it natively in the cloud. I've got it deployed the way I need it. And I've got that single viewpoint, that unified customer experience across all of it. Now I'm getting smarter with it. It's not just file X in location Y. What does it contain? Who owns it? How big is it? How long has it been there? Does it contain anything sensitive? I can start driving all these other intelligent actions out of that. And of course, having all of that data doesn't mean anything if it's at risk. And this is where the Commvault platform wraps this comprehensive data protection and security framework around it. And in it, we not only identify and mitigate the risks, but we can harden, isolate the environment. Various strategies for cloud data air gaps, data isolation, immutable configurations, constantly monitoring to find threats to your data as well. Not just, most people in this space are only looking at the backup data. Hey, I did a backup job. Let me look and see, is there anything, anomalous there that I should flag? And, if you're only backing up once a night, there's a huge risk of exposure there, in terms of not just, getting impacted by a cyber threat, but the time it takes you to realize that you have been impacted and be able to respond to that incident. Commvault does something really, really unique amongst the vendors, in which we are doing what we call active monitoring. So we're monitoring the active live environment, our own infrastructure, the clients we're managing and protecting, to give you that early warning system to catch incidents before they grow and expand and become really big problems in here. So we're looking at the backups and we're looking at the live environment to really ensure that you're aware of any potential threats. And of course, analyzing, looking for those threats, looking at not just external threats, but monitoring, looking for insider threats, rogue admins, or the unfortunate fat finger that ends up deleting things. Putting the protections in place so that you don't have to worry about somebody accidentally deleting the last night's backup, or overwriting a file with recovering the wrong data back into the wrong spot. We make sure that you're protected from those external threats, but also from any internal ones, either intentionally malicious or otherwise. And again, we talked about that core of flexibility. We saw that data mobility between platforms, between clouds, and that's never more important than when it coming to recover your data from a ransomware threat. If you're hit by ransomware, what's going to happen? You're probably going to isolate that network, maybe tie off those cloud resources, make sure that they're secure. So this gives you the ability to recover that data out of place, recover it where you need it. Maybe that original location is no longer trusted. So this whole thing wraps around to give you a very strategic and tactical approach to ransomware protection, on premises, in the cloud, in hybrid configurations. Just because your data is in the cloud doesn't mean that you don't need to address that threat of ransomware. So we've seen now how Commvault can protect the native workloads. We can see how we in the cloud with those API tie-ins, direct integrations into the applications, giving you that granularity to be able to protect and recover what you need. We've seen the data mobility, about moving that data where you need it to go, being able to burst and leverage dynamic and elastic compute and storage technology to really efficiently manage data the way you need it to be managed. And then we've seen what can you do with it in terms of not just migrating and moving it between clouds and across clouds, but really getting smart about it with the extra analytics, and then secure about it in terms of making sure that that data, regardless of where it happens to be living or moving, is protected from threats. Thank you very much. There was a lot to cover in 20-25 minutes. Here are my here's where you can hit me up on Twitter. You can email us at commvault.com/contact or contact us. Here's our corporate Twitter handles as well. And thank you, everyone. Please submit your questions. Like I said, this session just happened to be recorded, but I will be responding to it in the next day as soon as we receive them. Anyway, take care, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the MegaCast.
Well, thanks, Matt, in absentia, of course. That was just such an interesting presentation. And I know that Matt is looking forward to hearing from all of you when he lands, so please do keep those questions coming in. We will make sure that they get to Matt and to the Commvault team. Matt, when you see this, I hope that your trip was great, safe travels. And for all of us that are here today, I have put a poll question up for you here again. Please do take a moment to let us know what information or resources you want from Commvault. What else would you like to know about the Commvault solution? This feedback is so important. So I'm actually just going to leave this up for another moment. And while you're filling that out, let's get to another prize giveaway. Okay, so we have a $500 Amazon gift card plus one of those grand prizes, an awesome Apple M1 iPad Air tablet. And the next lucky winner of a $500 Amazon gift card today is Manish Oza of Michigan. Manish Oza of Michigan, you've won a $500 Amazon gift card. And our next grand prize winner of an Apple M1 iPad Air tablet is Hina Khan of Texas. Hina Khan of Texas. So congratulations to Manish and to Hina. As always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after the event. And don't forget that there are still lots more chances to win a prize today. Plus, that best question gift card from each session. For our next session on today's electrifying MegaCast, we are so excited to welcome David Hill, Global Technologist at Veeam. David, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you have a lot of great info to cover, so I'm going to hand the mic over to you. It's all yours.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm David Hill, Global Technologist in the Veeam Product Strategy Group, and I focus on mainly around our cloud products, so AWS, Azure, Google, and Kubernetes. So what I'm going to talk about today is, first of all, I'm going to give you a quick walkthrough of what Veeam's all about, what our product strategy is focused on. And then I'm going to talk about some of the concepts that we bring around on-premises storage, how you can leverage on-premises storage for backup and data protection, and then how you can also leverage the cloud for disaster recovery, for protecting your workloads, keeping all your backup data off-site. So as I said, I'm David Hill, part of the Product Strategy Office of the CTO. And what I want to dive into is Veeam's design strategy first. What do we focus on? Veeam focuses on all our products just being very simple to use. So easy to navigate UIs, simple APIs, those kind of things, but also making it very flexible. And what's very unique to Veeam is the same code that you would use in an agent to, say, back up your Windows laptop is the same code that we use to protect, say, a physical Windows machine. And what that provides us with is the flexibility to essentially just scale the product. So whether you're backing up one laptop or you're backing up 1,000 virtual machines or you're backing up 1,000 EC2 instances, it's very scalable and very flexible. And because of that, that brings with it a lot of reliability as well. And from a data protection perspective, reliability is probably the most important factor. There's no point taking backups of all your data and then in 9 months you've got this major outage in your data center, or someone's gone and deleted all your EC2 instances or RDS data, and then the product that you're using as your insurance policy doesn't work, doesn't provide you the capabilities. So with that, Veeam brings a very powerful platform that provides you with the capabilities to manage your data across multiple platforms. And in this kind of multi-cloud world that we find ourselves living in, where people still, excuse me, people still use physical Windows servers, Linux servers, but they're also using virtualization, whether it be vSphere, Hyper-V, Nutanix. They're finding themselves with workloads out in different public clouds spread across AWS and Azure. Then you've got things like Salesforce, you've got things like Office 365 or whatever name Microsoft is giving it this week. So you need the flexibility, the reliability, but also a very powerful platform that's able to manage all those capabilities. From a product strategy perspective, Veeam focuses on 3 core pillars. So making sure that the data is very secure. Whatever you're protecting is production data, and being able to make sure that that's accessible when you need it is very important. We focus very heavily on the cloud, and you'll see that in the next slide. And also, we've got a key focus on containers. So maybe you've heard of a product called Kasten by Veeam. That's a native Kubernetes data protection solution that integrates in the Veeam platform. So speaking of that Veeam platform, everything central that Veeam manages is done through Veeam backup and replication. And we're able to protect everything from unstructured data to applications like SAP HANA, SQL Server, Oracle, those kind of things. SaaS-based workloads, so Microsoft Teams backups, OneDrive, Exchange, Online. And then also, as I've already touched on, the cloud, the virtual and the physical worlds as well. So being able to protect all these platforms and technologies centrally from one, and it's a bit of a cliche that everyone's been talking about for 10 years, it's kind of single pane of glass, a centralized management platform. So no matter what you're protecting, you're able to manage all that data in one place, whether it's your retention periods, your restores or your backups or things like that. Everything's managed centrally. So if we look at some of our data storage options and what we can do, Veeam focuses on the best practice of the 3-2-1 rule. And the 3-2-1 rule has been around since I was a boy, when I used to drive around in my little car, taking tapes from one site to another and putting them in fire safe and making sure that they were always available but safe from the actual location of the data. And that's where you have 3 copies of your data across 2 different media types with at least one off-site. So if you think about 3 copies of your data, that could be your production data, so the live data, a backup of that data stored locally in your data center for fast recovery, and then maybe on tape or object storage with at least one of those being kept off-site. Veeam expands that into the 3-2-1-1-0 rule, and it tends to remind me of the old RAID arrays that we used to talk about, and that's making sure that one of those is offline or air-gapped or immutable. So think about tapes in a safe. Think about object storage, where you can use things like AWS's S3's object lock, things like that help you make sure that that data can't be edited, can't be deleted, can't be interfered with in any way. And then also making sure there's no errors once that backup's been taken. So verifying that the data is correct, it's not corrupted, those kind of things. So with that in mind, when we look at what Veeam actually builds out, we have what's called a scale-out backup repository. And this starts off with what we call the performance tier. So if you're running Veeam backup and replication on premises or anything like that, then you will build out a scale-out backup repository incorporating a number of different devices on premises. So direct attached storage, so things like just disks in a server, or a network attached storage, so your NAS devices, dedupe appliances like data domain, those kind of things. And also things like hardened repositories. So being able to use Linux to create yourselves immutable repositories so the data in there can't be edited or deleted. Then we can scale that out, and based on different policy types, making sure that you have enough space on premises, being able to manage these kind of capabilities, we can then automatically scale out to the public cloud. So things like S3 object storage, S3 compatible, those kind of things. So depending on how you define policies, we can move data from your on-premises environments to the public cloud for longer-term, lower-cost storage of that data. And it can be all fully automated. And this is critical when you're designing your infrastructure to make sure that you're able to protect that data as your needs grow, as your storage arrays run out of space. Think about NASes and dedupe appliances. They're very expensive. So being able to offload your data out to the public cloud helps reduce costs. And then we can leverage things like S3 Glacier and Azure Archive blob storage to again move that data even further to keep for longer retention periods, but again lower those costs as well. So building out a scalable data protection platform isn't just, oh, I need some local storage to store my backups on, oh, I need a tape drive. It's how do I recover quickly and how do I keep this longer term without impacting a lot of my storage costs, because storage is still very, very expensive. Focus on things like immutability as well. So as I mentioned, object lock in S3 or building out Linux hardened repositories. Immutability provides a key protection against ransomware and things like that. So you're able to protect your environment with the write once, read many solutions that these providers are able to bring to the table. In the same way that that a lot of people still use tape, but in the same way that once you've written to that tape and then you take it out, it's stored, it's safe, it can't be edited. If your environment's infected with ransomware, it can't be infected or anything like that. It's the same with things like immutability and object lock in S3 and those kind of capabilities. Once it's written once, it can be read multiple times, so you can recover as many times as you want, but you're not able to edit that data. So even if you're infected with ransomware, that data is safe and secure. Now, if we look at, as an example, in the cloud, how can we protect our workloads in the cloud, leverage these capabilities, and then how do we integrate that into our multi-cloud, multi-platform world? So this is an example of how you can protect AWS workloads, whether it's EC2, RDS, or EFS as an example. So things like Elastic File Service volumes. Now, the simple thing is just do it the same way we do with vSphere. Take some snapshots, but snapshots have never been true backups. They can be corrupted. They can cause issues when you're keeping lots of snapshots for a long time. They're also very expensive to keep in the public cloud. But you can start with snapshots, and then we can take those snapshots and offload those into things like S3 buckets, offload them to Glacier and Deep Archive. So the same use cases where I spoke about on-premises, where you can move your data to the public cloud, apply in the public cloud as well for that longer-term data retention. So it's very simple to protect your workloads, whether you're running those physical machines, running those virtual machines, or running those public cloud instances, whether it's a PaaS service like RDS or EFS, or whether it's EC2 instances, virtual machines, those kind of things in Azure, Google, or AWS. But it doesn't just stop there. Once you've taken those backups, how do you recover them? For example, let's say you've got a load of workloads running in your on-premises environment, and then your data center goes up in smoke. Can I recover to the public cloud? Well, with things like thinking about mobility of these workloads, cloud mobility is a great example. How you can protect these and recover these is very simple from a Veeam perspective. Everything that Veeam does is essentially portable. So whether you take a backup of a laptop, a physical machine, Windows, Linux server, a virtual machine like vSphere or Hyper-V, you can recover those to any platform. So you can take a physical backup of a physical server and go and recover that into the AWS public cloud or Azure or whatever you want to do. And it works the same way coming back from the public cloud. If you're protecting EC2 instances, you're able to recover those from AWS and go and do something like an instant recovery to vSphere, for example. So making sure that your data is portable and you're able to recover regardless of the scenario is critical when you're looking at how you can leverage storage options to protect your data regardless of where it is. So this kind of gives you an example of how we can build into a public cloud solution that 3-2-1 rule. So as I mentioned in a couple of slides ago, you take a snapshot of EC2, we leverage like EBS snapshots, we can offload those into S3 or S3 Glacier. But then with the centralized data management of Veeam backup and replication, we can also do things like backup copy jobs. So if you've got a data domain or some kind of dedupe appliance and you want to actually have copies of your data outside of that public cloud, then you can copy that to a local repository. So you can use your already existing infrastructure, your investment in that infrastructure to continue to provide the capabilities that you need regardless of what platform you're protecting. And then with that cloud mobility I was talking about, we're able to protect that data, recover to those virtual machines that I mentioned, but also to different cloud environments. So you can take a backup of an EC2 instance running in AWS and go and recover that to Azure or Google Cloud. And Veeam takes care of all the data moving, takes care of the conversions, because ultimately an EC2 instance is not running on the same hypervisor that, say, Azure is. So we can convert those virtual machines, provide the capabilities to bring those up and running, give you the capabilities to not only protect those instances, but the components that are required for that actual workload. Because it's important to remember that from that perspective, it's not just like what we used to do in the old days, oh, I just back up this particular server and then I go and recover it. There's so many different components that make up an application now that we're able to not only protect those instances and workloads, but also the supporting components as well. And if we look at that, how do we actually do this? Well, Veeam has what's called the Veeam portable backup file format. And this is very unique to any data protection solution. And I like to compare this to, because I'm getting old now and I've got a lot of gray hair, the difference between like the old days when I used to do data protection with Windows NT to show how far back I go, where you had zip drives versus WinZip. Now, zip drives were great for backups. You could use that hardware. You could store all your backup data on those zip drives. But now, fast forward to 2022, if you try and find a zip drive, they might be on eBay, but there's no guarantee they're going to work. So all that backup data that you took 20 years ago, you're not able to recover anymore without that piece of hardware. Whereas WinZip, for example, everyone used to use it on Windows and Linux and those kind of things. Everything that you stored in that zip file, you can still open today, regardless of whether you're using Mac, Linux, Windows, whatever, and you still have access to that data. Now, it's kind of tongue-in-cheek because most people don't really want to go and recover any of their data from 20 years ago. But fast forward in 20 years, most people are going to want to have access to their data now that they're collecting, whether it be photos or documents or anything like that. So with the Veeam portable backup file format, regardless of the platform, regardless of the actual instance, whether it is public cloud, virtual, physical, whatever, you're able to use this Veeam portable backup file format to recover to these platforms and also use free tools. So if one day you're not a Veeam customer and you want to recover in 5 years, you want to go and recover all your data that you protected with Veeam, there's free tools available that allow you to actually extract the data from those backup files and then able to recover them. So it's very powerful, very simple to use, very flexible and very reliable, regardless of what platform you're using. So I just kind of want to finish on a few additional resources. There's been some white papers written around like best practices for data protection. These aren't focused on Veeam, but they're very focused on what industry recommendations are. So ransomware and best practices are key in what's going on in the world now. And then also there's a Veeam data protection report from last year, which gives you a lot of insight into the trends that analysts are seeing out in the real world across these different multiple platforms, multiple instances, and essentially what small, medium, and large enterprises are seeing happening in their environments, and provided a lot of insight into analysts and built out this trend white paper. So I'd really recommend going and having a look at these 3 resources. They'll give you a lot more insight into what's happening in the world. So with that, I'm just going to say thank you very much and hopefully open it up for questions.
Well, thank you. What a wonderful presentation. And I do want to remind people while that slide is up that those links are clickable. So if you do want to access those resources that we've got up there or that David's put up for you, please do click on them. I am going to move the slide to the poll, but I will come back to the slide in a few moments here. So run to back to your computer. If you stepped away, click on those links now, but we will come back to it in just a moment. All right, let's get over to that poll. Please do take a minute to let us know what else you would like to, what additional information you'd like from Veeam, what else you'd like to know. And in the meantime, while you're doing that, David and I are going to dig into some of these questions here. You ready, David?
I am, yes.
Okay, awesome. First, I just want to say that you did get some high fives and some fans of Veeam out there, so you have some raving fans in the audience already.
Oh, brilliant. That's good news. Thank you.
Everyone needs a high five from time to time, right?
Yeah,
all
exactly.
Right. Well,
make you happy.
Okay, let's start. Colin in our audience actually has 2 questions about timing, so I'm just going to kind of ask you to, if you could give us a little information. He's wondering about setting sort of regular standing. He likes to do his backups every quarter or annually, so wondering about kind of setting up that kind of recurring timing. And then also had a question about having things move to something like Glacier, which you did mention is possible, but to have that be age-based. So when data reaches a certain age point, that happens automatically.
Yeah, so they're 2 great questions. So the first one, everything can be defined by policy. So you can set whether you want to do your backups, regardless of the platform, whether it's in AWS, vSphere, whatever, to whatever you want. So for example, like vSphere, we can go down to like 5-minute backups, or you can do them yearly. In AWS, you can take backups every hour if you want, or you can go as far as every year. So it's very easy because it's all policy defined. So you can just set whatever you want to do for your workloads based around what your required recovery time objectives are. So, and your recovery point objectives. So based upon what is the minimum amount of data I'm prepared to lose on my business, and how quickly do I need to recover it? So some businesses, for example, just to throw it out there, if you're a trading floor, you can't afford to lose a second of data. But if you're like a bread shop, for example, then if you were to lose a day's worth of data, it's not going to impact your business too much. So working out what the best recovery points are so you can recover your business easily, and then how quickly do I need this workload to be up and running? Again, using that analogy of the sales floor versus the bread shop, trading floors can't be down, so you need to recover very quickly. If the bread shop goes down, he can write receipts on a piece of paper and get everything up and running on the night. So understanding that. And then the other question about defining how often you can move things to Glacier and Deep Archive and stuff like that. Again, it's all policy based. So you can say, all my data that I store in S3, after 90 days, I want to move it to Glacier. After 180 days, I want to move it to Deep Archive and those kind of things. So again, it's just what is your tolerance versus cost basis of being able to recover, because the further you move it down the stack in AWS, the longer it takes to recover it. Now, it's cheaper to store it in Deep Archive, but if you want to pull that data out, then AWS charges you more to bring it back than if it's kept in just standard S3 object storage. So understanding what your recovery, how often you need to recover versus how much do you want to pay for storage, and then how much you want to pay for recover helps around that.
I think that's such a great point. David brought that up in his keynote, that understanding where you are, understanding what your needs are is kind of the first step in making sure that you actually have the right tool for you.
Exactly, yes, and that's critical when you're looking at any of this from a data storage perspective. Is it might look all great and shiny, and obviously you just put a credit card in and you get a nice cheap bill, but then once you actually start having to use it, what are the storage costs and recovery costs involved in that? And the next thing you know, you've got a massive bill and your boss isn't approving your Amex expenses anymore. So yeah, very, very important to understand that.
And is Veeam, do you guys have some training materials and things to help with people as they're making these decisions and making sure that they're using the tool properly for what they need?
Yeah, we do. We have a lot of resources on the Veeam website at veeam.com. So we have white papers, we have like the Veeam Help Center, we have a training location with lots of videos and stuff like that that'll help people understand the technology, understand the business requirements, and depending on what the job level is, you can go everything from like deep down in the architecture to understanding just what are the recommended business requirements for using Veeam and why you would use Veeam. All on veeam.com.
Yeah, that's great. Understanding specific use cases that might apply to you. Because we do have some questions here about customization as well. And actually, in one case, wondering if, so Jeremy here is wondering about the Veeam Rescue Agent and what's the return to production for a BMR restore. Any driver issues expected for custom setups is kind of his follow-up question to that.
Yeah, so with any kind of solution that you're using, like custom agents, in-house stuff, anything like that, it's always best to test things before you actually do them. So, you know, we can say as Veeam, yes, that's no problem, but, you know, much like your car insurance, it's always there, it's always if you need it, but we all know once you crash a car and you phone your car insurance, then typically you don't get what you're looking for. So it's always best to test things before you actually go and implement this in a production environment. So things like, as an example, moving an EC2 instance to Azure, for example. If you've got a load of custom agents in there that are actually specifically designed for AWS, moving them to Azure might bring in some complications or it might not. So always test your platforms out first, make sure that everything works. Do you need to bring in any kind of maybe pre or post restore scripts that help with that conversion? So it's always best to test things and make sure they work.
Well, I love that. I think that's true for many things in life, and definitely with technology solutions. All right. Well, we are running out of time. I wish we could keep going, David, because there's lots of great questions still coming in. Are you able to stick around and answer some of our live chat as well?
Yes, I can do that.
Excellent. Okay, so David will answer some questions, and the Veeam team will be following up with anyone that doesn't get an answer immediately. So please do keep those questions coming in. We'll make sure that they get to David and to Veeam. I have put up that slide again here. There's some great resources. David, can you just sort of wrap up? And you've hit this a few times, but I want to make sure that we drive this home for folks. What is the next step if somebody wants to get started with Veeam or wants to find out if that's the right solution for them?
Yeah. So the best next steps is start at veeam.com and then you can look at all the different technologies. You can download trials, pretty much everything that Veeam has. We offer free products. So like I was talking about AWS, for example, if you're just a born in the cloud AWS customer, you can go to like the AWS marketplace and you can protect up to 10 instances, regardless of what they are, entirely free. Same with Veeam Backup and Replication. You can install what we call Community Edition, which is completely free, allows you to protect up to 10 instances. You can see here some links to like Kubernetes backup, so you can go protect up to 10 Kubernetes hosts entirely free. So anything that you want to get started with on a small basis, you can just download from our website, set it up, see if it meets your requirements, and then you can come to Veeam and say, okay, I like this, I want to buy it, I want to do this, what can we do, and move forward. So start at Veeam's website, look at the resources there, decide if you want to use our products, download some free trials, free instances, and just follow through that cycle. Or just reach out on veeam.com and someone will get in touch with you and help you move forward.
I love that. Well, thank you very much again, David. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, let's move right along here because we have another prize giveaway. So we are giving away a $500 Amazon gift card to someone here at the live event, as well as the grand prize Apple M1 iPad Air tablet. So our next winner of a $500 Amazon gift card is Justin Lawler of Ohio. Justin Lawler of Ohio. And our next grand prize winner of an Apple M1 iPad Air tablet is Cody Sulewski of Wisconsin. Cody Sulewski of Wisconsin. Cody, I'm sure I said your last name wrong, but you know who you are. Congratulations to Justin and Cody. As always, we will be in touch about claiming your prizes after the event, and there is one more chance to win today, plus that best question gift card from each session, so keep those questions coming in. Okay, guys, it had to happen eventually. We've done it. We've reached the very last session in today's MegaCast, and it has definitely been full of brain-buzzing sessions, and this last presentation is no exception. I'm so excited to introduce John Capello, VP Strategy Field CTO at Nasuni. John, thank you so much for being here. You're our grand finale. You're wrapping up our MegaCast.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's rare that I get introduced as brain buzzing, but I will do my best. I will definitely do my best. Awesome. Well, thank you all for having me. Yeah, I am with Nasuni, and as we've been talking about, and I know you guys have been talking about all day here, I'm here to talk to you about file storage in the cloud for the cloud era. And what I am here to talk about is the solution from Nasuni, because we really have taken a different approach to cloud storage from a lot of other companies, because we founded our entire file infrastructure, our entire file model on use of object storage. So there's a way in which a lot of technologies have used object storage, in which they sort of bolted on afterwards. So they build an entire solution based on block data and based on being in the data center. And then to get to the cloud, they said, oh, well, why don't we just write to the cloud? We actually said, no, we're going to start from the ground up. We're going to start with the objects sort of being the fundamental part of our solution. And you're going to see how that has had huge implications for us. And it has huge implications for our customers because they get so much value out of a solution built on that. So I think I'll just kind of take you through a little bit of a discussion around who we are first, and give you a sense of the types of customers that come to Nasuni. I'll talk a little bit about the challenge that they face and why they look to us to help them with that. I'll talk about what our solution does, and I'll get into some of the technical details about how we do it, and then kind of wrap up with some of the value about that. But all throughout, please, put the questions in the chat. Really excited to engage at the end in particular on these. What you see right here on this page, proven success moving file infrastructure to the cloud. A couple of really important things to point out here, which is that the customers that Nasuni serves are usually very large enterprise customers. Enterprise customers that have had significant challenges in managing large file infrastructure footprints. So that could be the 13 petabytes that we have from Omnicom Group. That's where we replace NetApp and Windows file servers. We replace Veritas and other tape backups. all the way down to, born in the cloud companies like LinkedIn or companies like Electronic Arts. In all of these cases, what we see is that companies that are trying to manage a more and more complex file infrastructure, at the same time, they're still trying to manage the simplicity of providing file services in an increasingly global world. So, it's one thing that the file sizes are getting bigger. It's another thing that the file volumes are getting bigger. The directories are getting bigger. But that's another thing that we want all of that available in all different locations. And then you put on top of that this threat of ransomware, which I know you all heard a lot about today. And what does ransomware do? Well, it attacks exactly the weakness of that old infrastructure, which is it gets to that heart of the problem of we are going to make you have to go find your backups. We're going to have to make you find those previous versions. And the old technology that thought of protection as something that happens periodically every day, maybe every couple of hours, it just doesn't cut it in a world in which you're going to be attacked when you don't know it. And you're going to be attacked at scales that can really boggle the mind. So moving file infrastructure to the cloud is about moving to a modern approach for these very, very big challenges of scale under the threat of these very real challenges of file attacks. So what does a typical customer come to us? What do they look like? Well, it's kind of like this. There's a lot of pain around the cost and complexity of managing file infrastructure. It just starts with basic storage, primary storage. I have to make sure I provision enough. And for some reason in our industry, we made it really complicated because we didn't say, hey, think about your data and think about how much data you have. You have to really think about the provisioning of the data and whether or not the data is compressed or deduped. And then you have to think about, what percentage of the data you're going to be using on that particular array. And, we've made this, very complex, set of equations to determine just something simple of like, well, I know, an average project is going to have 10 terabytes. And if I do 10 in a year, why can't I just provision 100 terabytes? It's never that simple in the old world. But that's the first of the challenges. The second challenge is what I was talking about before is you have to back that up. You have to make sure that you have copies of that. You cannot rely on that one device that's in your data center to be able to, be the gold copy of all your information, to be the actual, true value of your business. You need to have multiple copies. You need to have plans for how you would get back from multiple copies. So there's always these other technologies that go on top of primary storage. And then when it comes to the risks that you see, the risks aren't just about a server will fail, but the risk could be about my office goes down or my data center goes down. So then you have to have another strategy, which is make sure you have another set of copies somewhere else that has a different, power subsystem, that has a different set of, risks associated with environmental factors. That's a whole other set of issues where you're trying to manage that. And then finally, on top of that, or at the bottom of the slide, you can see more and more we're seeing multi-site file sharing. And before the pandemic, it was very obvious to a number of companies that they were growing into a world where they had to make their files available in different parts of the world, because to compete, you had to be global. To be global, you had to have one common namespace that you could all participate in to have a true global workforce. But everyone realized that the edge is everywhere, and you are a multi-location company once the pandemic hit, because as we all went back to our houses, that meant that all of our networks went back to our houses, or all of our endpoints were back at our houses. So the challenge of having all that data protected and backed up and DR'd appropriately now became challenging, because now you have to figure out how you're going to distribute it to all these different locations. So that's a lot to deal with. It's a lot to deal with because there's a complicated set of problems that come together there. And they come together because they didn't start out by trying to solve a problem using the modern technology, the technology of today, the cloud technology of today. So when you think of cloud data storage today, the underlying technology for every major cloud provider is the object store. S3, blob storage, Google Cloud Storage. It is the most scalable, the most durable, the most cost-efficient way of storing data. And up until a few years ago, it was really used for mostly in the cloud foreign companies that can write directly to the object store. They write S3, or it was companies that were trying to just move old data there. They weren't going to really access it very much, but they just wanted to use it as kind of a dumping ground. Well, what we said at this time was, look, there's a big opportunity here. What if you built a file system, an entire file infrastructure based on the objects in the object store? So that means that the number of files, the number of directories is going to be driven by the number of objects that I can get into my object store. It's not going to be driven by how much space I have on a hard drive that I buy for a box that I provision. The actual data, the gold copy of the data, is always going to be in the object store, and that means that the file system is going to be constrained only by the number of objects. And we have yet to find a file system or a provider that has limited us on the number of objects. And we have some very, very large volumes. And so the fact that we did that, we created UniFS, a global file system based on object storage, and you access that through, not by going directly to UniFS, not by going directly to the object store, but you go through these little edge appliances. They're basically like little CentOS boxes, Linux boxes, that on the front end speak CIFS, they speak NFS. So they present out to the customer what would look like a traditional file share. But on the back end, what they're doing is they're transforming data as it comes in, pushing into the cloud, and then they're bringing data from the cloud and putting that and making that available to the end user. So we call it edge caching, and it really is a way of separating how you think about your file infrastructure. You think about the scale of your infrastructure because it's based on the size of these volumes inside the object store. But you think about how I access it by the type of device that is designed for my workload. So if I need a high-performance device that has a really small cache, I can do that. I can build a VM, a virtual machine of an Asuni Edge, so that it can be very high-performing for high throughput or for high IOPS. If I just need a very small appliance, I might have a very large data set, but there's only 1 or 2 workers working on it. I could have a 5 terabyte cache that is driven off of a laptop. We have customers that do that as well. And so what we did was, by virtualizing this file system and by providing these access points that are separate from the actual underlying file system storage, we make it very, very flexible for a company to put their data into a very durable system, but make it available in a very flexible way through these edge caches. So once we did that, and that was one of the first innovations years ago, our customers then said, well, look, if I have an edge here in my New York office, I've got another edge in my Chicago office, it'd be really great if I could get them to work with one another. And so we developed this notion of remote sharing, and then that became this idea of how do I have multi-site access without losing consistency of the file system. So we created a number of services that we provide where you can keep your files, your multi-site volumes in sync by an orderly system so that any appliance will push data into the cloud, but only do it one at a time. And whenever an appliance pushes to the cloud, no other appliance can push, but all the other appliances can synchronize down from that. So that's part of our cloud orchestration. And we have a very big service in what we call the global file lock. And that's really exciting because that means if I have the same volume, if I'm working on a project in New York and my colleague's working on a project in Chicago, and she opens up the Acme file, and she locks that file because she's opened it up in her application. If I were in New York and I wanted to open up that file, I would see a locked file. But if I'm in Chicago, I'm working off of my Asuni Edge, and I'm going to work off of my cache. Well, with global file locking, you still get that lock because when she opened up that file, Acme, it went to our cloud orchestration center. It said, hey, I want a lock for this file. Is one available? We gave her that lock, and then anyone else who's looking for that file now has to check through the orchestration center as well. We did 78 billion of those file locks last year, and we do it across our customer base. It's a really, really popular feature of ours. And what it does is it means you can be in any location in the world. You can have as many, appliances, edge devices that are attached to a volume, and you can be file locking as if they were all in the same single location. And all of this is managed because we've got this one device called the Asuni Management Console, and it has matured over the last 10 years to become not just a single pane of glass, but it is a full suite of REST APIs that you can use to orchestrate your environment. You manage your logical and your physical environment from there. I can create volumes, I can determine the health of my edge devices. I can look at the changes that I see in usage across the system. I can set quotas through it. There are many, many things that you can do there. And on top of that, we have a number of different integrations with third-party apps too, which I'll get into in a second. But I just want to reiterate some of the things that I just talked about here with these key components. I want to bring up another one here. So just to reiterate, we've got in the core here, we have a file system based on top of object storage. One of the biggest innovations that we've made in this company is that specific thing, which is a file system based on the object store. One of the things I want to mention about that is that file system is continually updated when there are changes made on the edge. So when in the SUNY, when someone accesses a file on one of those edge devices, let's say it's that Acme file. Someone writes that Acme file, and let's say that Acme file is 4 megs. Well, what we're going to do on the edge device is we're going to chunk that file into 1 meg chunks. And actually, depending on the type of workloads, we can vary that. Let's say we'll do 10 meg chunks after 50 meg files, and we'll do 30 meg chunks after 100 meg files. We can vary that really as is appropriate to both the object store and to the workload. But the basic thing is that we're going to chunk that data, we're going to compress that data, and we're going to deduplicate on a chunk basis. We then write that data to the cloud. But instead of just saying, okay, I'm just going to commit these 4 objects to the cloud, let's say it's chunks, A, B, C, and D, we actually add one little file with it, a little object that gets put into the cloud with it called the manifest file. And that manifest file is pretty simple. At its root, what it does, at its basic form, what it does is it says, hey, Acme version 1 is actually chunks A, B, C, and D. Now, if I came along and I changed Acme on my edge device, let's say I got the lock and I was able to change it, but I only changed data in what was chunk C. Well, we're not going to create a whole new file. We're not going to create 4 new chunks. What we're going to do is we're going to create 1 new chunk, chunk E, and 1 new manifest file that says, hey, version 2 is going to be chunks A, B, E, and D. And we're not going to send chunks A, B, E, and D up to the cloud again. We're just going to send chunk E up to the cloud. So it's really, really efficient. It only changes the deltas, it only moves the deltas into the cloud, but it's got these manifest files. And the really critical thing about those manifest files is that every single manifest file is a restore point. That means for directories have manifest files, files have manifest files, or manifest objects. Every single time a change happens to a directory or a change happens to a file, there's a manifest file there. So to give some sense of context there, some sense of scale here, we have a customer that's been with us for 6 years. They have 400 terabytes on the, what we'd say on the front end. The back end is probably close to like 500, 600 now at this point because they've been versioning for 6 years. They at one point had 100 different locations tied to the same volume. They were taking snapshots every 5 minutes, so they'd have a volume level snapshot every 5 minutes. But they will also have global file lock on, and every time you're making changes in that file, you're also going to be taking a version, and you're also going to have a restore point. They have 1.7 billion restore points. 1.7 billion places that they could restore either a directory, a file, or a volume to in the Nisumi file system. And just let that sink in for a second because you'll see why that's really, really important in a few slides. But the most important thing is that it's a version file system. And the second thing is that we never overwrite anything. There's nothing in the code path that can allow us to overwrite an object once it's put into the cloud. So we are, by definition, a worm system. You write once, you read many. That means that we have eliminated so many opportunities for corruption just because of that. We made that one design decision that said we're only going to make changes, delta changes. We're going to make up for all that extra data, you might say, by having a very, very efficient file chunk structure and some compression and deduplication. So when you put, say, 100 terabytes into Nisumi, you usually have about 60 terabytes compressed and deduped after data reduction on the back end. It usually takes about a year and a half before that 60 terabytes will grow in terms of the number of versions to hit 100 again. I'm going to just talk quickly through a couple of these slides because I know we're getting close to the end. I definitely want to make time for questions. One of the last things I'll talk about here, I know we talked about the Edge of the Core Orchestration Center, we talked about the NMC, we talked about these Edge appliances. The analytics connector. This is a very, very powerful tool where you can take any part of a massive file system. When I say any part, you could say, hey, I want every PDF file that was written in the last 5 years, or I want every PDF file written in the last 5 years that has the name Acme in the title and that was part of the current project subdirectory. So you can define any kind of sophisticated regular expression or query on this. And what the index connector will do is it will go through the file system and it will take just those files that meet that criteria, and it will make a very quick temporary copy into what we would call like a native object bucket. So we would take those files and we put them into either an S3 bucket or an Azure Blob storage container. And inside of that would be just those files as files, not as chunks or anything like that. But what that does is that means that now you've got that data available to all those amazing services that exist inside the cloud. So we have customers that do that so they can run image recognition on their files. We have customers who do it so they can run search along those files. We have customers who can do that because they want to do some kind of text analysis. All of this can happen because we can store massive amounts of data and then extract whatever small part you want to temporarily put into a place that can be analyzed by any of those systems. And you're only going to see more of that grow over time because we actually just released a bunch of open source tools that will help you make those connections between your Nasuni volume and any of the major cloud services. I'm going to just kind of quickly skip over this so I can get to probably my favorite slide in this whole deck. And this goes back to the versioning before. You know what the best reason to have a Nasuni file system is? It's this right here. And honestly, we didn't design it with ransomware in mind. This was, we built UniFS 12, 13 years ago when ransomware, wasn't really what it is today, which is like a constant threat that every customer has to worry about. But this is what's so powerful about that version file system. You remember that customer I talked about, 1.7 billion restore points? Well, moving any part of your file system to a restore point takes about 30 seconds. So just imagine if let's say my entire projects directory was hit by ransomware, and I knew it was hit at 12 p.m., and I figured all this out at 12:15, but by 1:15, the entire directory, let's say 100 million files, has been attacked by ransomware. Well, what happens then? If I want to restore, I basically say, put the projects folder back to the point just before 12 o'clock. That takes about 30 seconds. If you don't believe me, there's a fantastic video on the Nasuni website that will walk you through all that. But it basically means it doesn't matter how many files you have to recover, it doesn't matter how complex your directories are. It's a constant time to recover inside Nasuni as opposed to the other systems. So for our customers, none have ever paid the ransom. And for them, ransomware really is an annoyance, but it is not a disaster. So very quickly, before we move on to questions, why would you want to go with Nasuni for file storage, or why do you want to think about an object-based system for file storage? Well, if you are on the object storage, your foundational storage technology, you're already on the lowest cost system out there. And you're only going to ride that cost curve because the object storage is only getting cheaper over time. We make it so it's very simple, easy to deploy, migrate, and manage. And then, of course, built-in data protection. There isn't a second system to back it up. It's the system itself that has the durability, the system itself that has the protections and the number of versions, but we rely on the object store for all that durability and geo-redundancy. That's on the service providers. And so it means that you can think about your system without limits in terms of how much I want to store, where I want to access it, or how long it's going to take me to move throughout the full version history of my file system. So I know we're getting close to the end of the hour, and I want to make sure that the half hour, I want to make sure that we've got some time for questions. We do save you money. We do save you a significant amount of money, and you can always talk with us to get a more specific description of how that would work in your environment. We do these economic business impacts all the time for customers. It's probably one of the easiest ways to understand whether or not Nasuni can really provide a lot of value for you. You can go to Nasuni.com. You can follow us on Twitter. We actually have a ton of stuff going on there most recently. Feel free to reach out to me as well about that. But I really want to thank you for your time and thank you for listening.
Well, that was awesome. I definitely would describe that as brain buzzy, John. I think you nailed it.
Thank you.
Well, just a great presentation, and obviously the fun is not over because you're going to stick around and we're going to answer some questions. As always, I'm going to just put up this poll question here. So if you would like to get some more information about Nasuni, please let us know. This feedback is so helpful. And John, Larry, and Pablo want you to know that they thought the presentation was just excellent, and I have to agree.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
As we jump in, I actually have a behind-the-scenes question for you. Somebody in the audience asked, as you're watching these presentations, just speaking on behalf of some of the presenters here, are you looking at what other people are doing and thinking, you know, oh, that's interesting, maybe we'd like to do that? And I'd like to kind of leverage that into a follow-up question, you know, maybe about how Nasuni approaches this kind of constant development and how that would actually benefit clients.
You mean, are we getting inspiration from, you know, other technologies and other people that we in our industry? Was that kind of the question?
That was the initial question, yeah, and then just kind of in general how you approach those innovations.
I love both of these questions because I'm in London right now, and I'm in London for a user group, our EMEA user group, and I can tell you very honestly, our innovations happen at our customers. Our innovations happen at the edge. We had a user group yesterday, and we had 2 customers stand up, and they showed what they had done with our platform, things that we never have thought about. Like we never would have, you know, we may have put on a roadmap at one point, but we never would have said, oh yeah, we really got to put some extra effort into this. One was, this is a great one. They created a Slack bot using Nasuni's API, and that Slack bot was used so you could figure out who in your company had the lock on the file. So what would happen sometimes is, and this is true, you know, with any system, like you open up a file and you're like, oh, it's locked. Okay, well, who has the lock? Well, I don't know. You know, it's locked. But with Nasuni, you can always query your API and you can find out, you know, who actually has that lock. Well, in this, you know, multinational, they have, you know, 20, 30 different locations around the world, but they all work off of the same volumes. It used to take a lot of time to figure that out. Like it would take hours. You know, you call IT and then IT would get back to you and then you have to find the person. The person went home for the day and all that stuff. Now it takes 6 seconds. And we love that idea. And then we saw another example of that with a Teams integration that was just every interaction that happens on the Nasuni develops. You can subscribe to audit events that go through a message protocol, AMQP. And so this customer built this entire AMQP service to ingest those messages and then put it as part of the Teams activity feed. So you can actually see in your Teams folder, in your project folder, hey, who opened what file, who made something new for that day. And you can use Teams to be able to say like, hey, you know, who was working on, you know, acme.doc last week? And you can just search through that list of, filter out that list of actions. So our innovation, a lot of it comes from listening to our customers. There are a number of companies out there that we listen to, and it's, you know, we don't always like to say exactly who they are, but they really, you know, set the pace for us, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, I like that. It's always helpful to kind of trade back and forth with someone as running whatever race you're in.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, we've got a question from Paul here. He's wondering if Nasuni includes its own native analytics tool to process data in the cloud, or do you have partners that can provide that service?
Well, right now we do partner, and that's part of that analytics connector that I was talking about. So if you wanted to do sort of like, you know, best-in-class, you know, natural language analysis or text extraction, you know, you have your choices of like the Cognitive Suite at Microsoft, or you know, all the really, you know, really interesting ML tools at AWS. And now our Google relationship is deepened, so we're very excited to start introducing some of what they offer to those customers as well. So we know that you know, to do some of these really in-depth analytics, and when analytics, I mean, you know, more of like anything that requires like a machine learning classifier. That stuff really requires a lot of expertise and a lot of you know, in-depth knowledge and a lot of industry knowledge. And we know that the hyperscalers have that. They have that talent there. What we can provide is a way of getting that data into them, but we'll also work with whatever kinds of analytic tools we see our customers moving towards. So the most recent one is around Grafana. In fact, we just published a bunch of Grafana profiles that you can download from our GitHub page, Nasuni Labs. And that has become like Grafana obviously isn't something that we've developed. It's not our own like internal analytics suite, but we know how important it is for visualization. So, when we can, we try to leverage the ecosystem. We really try to leverage, best in class out there. And when we think we can do something better, when we think that, being the file system, you have, access to the data, or you have the, it's easier for you to be able to make correlations between types of data, then that's where we step in and we decide, okay, well, that'll be stuff that we own, and then we'll make that available to other systems.
Okay. I hate to say this, but I think this is going to have to be our last question because we have so many and we are just very short on time, but it's a good one. Joey is wondering here, he says, you said you could save us money, all capitals. What can our company expect to save? And I actually want to add a follow-up to that. How long before your companies can expect to start seeing that savings, that ROI?
I would say most customers see about a 50% savings from traditional storage. So if I had to, if you had a gun to my head and you said, how much am I saving? And I assume that's kind of the spirit of the all caps. Then I would say you'll probably end up seeing 50%. But if you have more locations, you're going to save more. If you have increasingly stricter protection requirements, you're definitely going to save more on that. And if you have particular governance requirements, especially across different borders where there's a lot of different data governance laws, you're definitely going to save more with us on that. So it's going to depend, but I would say as a rule of thumb, it'll probably end up being in the 50%. It'll probably hit 50%, say maybe on the low end 40, and on the high end we've seen customers save like 90% off of what they normally would pay.
I love that. That's okay. I know I said. Yeah, that's a good place to end, and I should end it there, but I have to sneak in this last question because I love it. I'm sorry to everyone that wants to go, but Clinton just asked, what is the most exciting change that's coming on your roadmap? And I have to ask that one, John. What is the most exciting thing coming out?
Oh, there's a jaw-dropping ransomware detection demo that if you're lucky to be an Infinity customer, you get this like preview of it now. And it's going to go onto our site probably in the next, I think probably the next like 4 or 5 months maybe. But if you're a prospect, I'm sure we can get you a session to check that as well. But it is amazing. It's amazing how quickly we can both detect it, and then the really cool thing will be what we can do to automatically shut up access, do all the things that are required on the system side, and then do the restores. There's a whole set of tools that we have for that. So we're building off of what is like literally like we set the standard when it comes to recovery time. Like you can't beat 36 seconds, But on top of that, we've made real big strides across the whole like detection and the other restore pieces to it too as well.
Awesome. I love that. Clinton, thank you for that question. I'm glad we got that in. So awesome. Very last seconds here. What should someone do if they want more information about the ransomware demo you just mentioned, or just getting started with Nasuni in general? What is their next step?
So definitely go to Nasuni.com. On Nasuni.com, you should find the ransomware demo. I think if you just Google Nasuni ransomware, I think it'll come up first at this point. But yeah, definitely go to Nasuni.com. Lots of great content there. We have just an amazing marketing team that has made it very easy to see exactly like the powerful parts of Nasuni, and reach out to us. If you are working with any of your big cloud providers, if you're working with Google or Microsoft or AWS, I know that your rep knows us. I know that your rep knows about Nasuni. And if they don't, the next person they ask will know about us. So if you're thinking about, okay, well, I'm going to be inside of Azure, I'm going to be inside of AWS, but boy, this Nasuni stuff sounds really interesting, ask them about it. We'll engage you. It's going to be a great conversation.
I love that. Yes. Well, clearly any conversation with you, John, is a good one. So 10 out of 10 recommend reaching out and getting that rolling. Thank you so much for being here today, and thanks for sticking around a little bit late over time to answer some questions for us.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Take care.
All right. Well, one last thing, if you're looking for some great information from Nasuni, do click into that Handouts tab. There is a fascinating white paper there from Nasuni outlining a no-brainer cost model for moving file storage to the cloud. So if you are interested in some personalized cost-saving advice, be sure to check that out. Okay, and I know that you guys are all waiting for that very last prize giveaway. So the final winner of a $500 Amazon gift card is Kirsten Doubles of Minnesota. Kirsten Doubles of Minnesota. And the final grand prize winner of the Apple M1 iPad Air tablet is Aaron Valente of Massachusetts. Aaron Valente of Massachusetts. Just going to do a quick recap here. We had a gift card going to Jing Yuan of Hawaii, a grand prize going to Scott Fagan of Illinois, a gift card going to Samantha Fox of Virginia, and a grand prize to David Jones of Pennsylvania. Gift card going to Manish Oza of Michigan, and a grand prize going to Hina Khan of Texas. A gift card going to Justin Lawler of Ohio, and a grand prize going to Kodo Suleski of Wisconsin, and ending out here with a gift card going to Kirsten Doubles in Minnesota, and a grand prize going to Aaron Valente of Massachusetts. So to all of our lucky winners here today, including the best question, don't forget about that. That'll come up after, once we review all the questions. Best question asked in each session gets $50. All of these prize winners will reach out to you after the event. Now, before you head out today, make sure to check out the Actual Tech Media ransomware guide in the Handouts tab. You can find everything you need to know about ransomware, how to understand, prevent, and recover. That is a clickable link right there on the screen, so visit ransomware.org for more information. If you are on the event today and you would like to chat with us about presenting at a future EcoCast or MegaCast event, we would love to hear from you. Reach out via email at connect@actualtechmedia.com. Well, with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank all of our speakers from Synology, Rubrik, Commvault, Veeam, and Nasuni for making this event possible. And really a special thank you to all of you for attending and asking some great questions. I hope you've all learned some interesting and helpful tips today about data management, data storage, gotten some clarity around on-prem and cloud solutions. I know that the day has been full of moments that got my brain buzzing, and I'm feeling simultaneously exhausted and totally energized. These MegaCasts are definitely a mental roller coaster, and I love it. Speaking of electrifying sessions, I hope that we will see you all again next week on Thursday. That's May 12th for Actual Tech Media's MegaCast Best Practice Series, Creating and Implementing a Data Protection Strategy and Disaster Recovery Plan. The MegaCast kicks off at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 9 a.m. Pacific. That's on Thursday, May 12th. So be sure to register for that now. Now, I hope that you have an absolutely electrifying, brain-buzzing, lighting up conversation ahead of you today. I hope that you'll come back and have another one with me again soon. And until then, have an absolutely beautiful rest of your day.